I'm getting back to my agenda. I'm going to go ahead and call the Town of Essex Select Board meeting for Monday, September 15th to order, since we are past 6:30. First item up is agenda additions or changes. Are there any changes from staff?
None from staff.
Anything from the board?
Just wondering if we could pull the minutes and put them as any business item.
Okay. Anything else? If not, I would entertain a motion to amend the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Okay, thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Shannon. I'll go ahead and throw that at business item 6C.
Anything's fine.
Right after our interview, since we try to do those first and foremost. So we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. And we have an amended agenda. Next on our agenda is public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time for members of the public to address the board for items that are on the consent agenda or not on the agenda. I do want to run through just some general guidelines for the meeting. Please silence your phones. For those online, please keep your microphones muted until recognized by the chair. For the meeting, please be civil, please be brief. As a general rule, any comments longer than a few minutes represent, at least to me, a need to have a deeper conversation, either via email, a meeting, or being added to a future agenda. So please keep that in mind as you're making your comments. Please be brief. Again, reminder, please keep your cell phones silenced. Refrain from side conversations. Please be respectful to staff and those who are speaking during the meeting. And when called on by the chair, please state your name and your residence for the record. So with that, we will move along to public to be heard. If you are in the room, you can raise your physical hand. If you are online, you can raise your virtual hand by clicking the reactions icon in the lower center of your screen, and from there you should have an option to raise hand. I do see a hand in the room, so I'll call you forward to speak. Welcome.
My name is Sally Fleury. I live at 85 Fleury Road. This is a good thing, guys. I just wanted to thank everybody on the select board and staff for the crosswalks. Public Works. I think it's a high impact for not a lot of money. I don't know. I just learned how much they were, and I didn't think it was that much money. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sally.
Thank you for starting us off on a positive note.
Lorraine has her hand up.
Anyone on? Yep, Lorraine, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to also reiterate what Sally just said. I live at 74 Center Road in Essex. I just used the crosswalk and it was great. So thank you all. It was fantastic. Thank you. Just a quick question about 2025 and technology and minutes. I'm wondering if we're ever going to consider, or if we can, move to a transcription, full transcription of meetings that are searchable. Use that with a link so it doesn't take up too much room for storage somewhere, and that there would be a summary for the minutes in terms of what gets posted. I heard a recent comment that that I struggle with around minutes and being kind of reduced in a way, and they're so important for us in the public in terms of doing our research and what works, what doesn't work, what the history is behind things. And I would just hope that we're going to move toward full transcription, especially with AI. And I believe we have a good IT team that can help us out with that. Thanks.
Thank you, Lorraine. Any other public comment in the room or online? Not seeing any. We will move along to our consent items. Of course, absent 5A, the minutes. With no discussion on the consent agenda, I would entertain a motion to approve. Andy.
I move approval of the consent.
Thank you.
as
Andy,
modified.
is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Shannon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Bringing us to our business items. First up, interview, possible appointment of a volunteer to serve on the Housing Commission, Lois Whitmore. Go ahead and come on forward and take a seat. And when you come up, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself when you're settled and why you're interested in the Housing Commission.
I am a householder of maybe quarter of a century of standing in Essex, living in an old historical house. Some people know it as the Colonel Page House, which is on the corner of Old Stage Road and Brigham Hill Road, which has seen a great deal of development in our neighborhood and a great deal of traffic also coming from Milton, and a great deal of unaddressed speeding, which is also a character of some of the development and more recent developments in our neighborhoods. My background, I'm a former art teacher in university with a side period, a year of concrete engineering, and editing technical reports for an engineering testing lab. I've also worked for 7 or 8 years with the Community of Vermont Elders, which died last spring, or at the end of the year. And the Community of Vermont Elders was a local, homegrown senior advocacy movement. One of the areas that it addressed, obviously, was housing. And there were sort of 3 elements within that which I think are applicable to developing housing in Essex. One of them has to do with the concept of universal design and the idea of matching universal design to repurposing buildings. Because over the lifespan of buildings, we've seen schools and warehouses and old facilities be turned into, or have the potential to be turned into, residences, thus liberating the housing of large houses like the one I live in for other uses. Universal design, were it to be part of Essex's zoning code, would basically allow any building that was built to be repurposed along the way so that it was accessible for somebody to use as a commercial venture and meet ADA guidelines, or to be used as housing, particularly housing for seniors or handicapped people, whatever. But it builds it in at the time when it's least expensive to put it in. And one of the things that happened during the course of a committee meeting at the Cove meeting was a meeting with realtors having to do with how feasible this was to do, whether it was possible to do on a state level or whether it needed to be done on a municipal level. So that's an interesting question. Another thing we looked at was the possibility of housing surveys to see what available housing there was and what the need was. And while there's been a very large emphasis on workforce housing, I see 2 problems with it. One is that there are people who are not necessarily tied to a particular business on a long-term basis, but nevertheless have a need for housing. And there are people who need a place to move in town to work within this area that's affordable. I'm not talking subsidized, I'm talking market rate, but which meets the guidelines it has some correlation to the kinds of income that people can expect when they're starting out. So that could be retired teachers, it could be seniors who are downsizing, it could be new couples with young children, but it's a middle ground, and there hasn't been a lot of attention focused on that particular population. There's been much more emphasis on workforce housing. What happens, I think, is the possibility of doing a balance between housing for workforce and housing to make what we have available so that seniors can move elsewhere, or people, as their needs change, can change housing and still maintain it within their income guidelines. And that's a particular interest of mine.
Perfect. At this point, I'll open it up to board questions. Shannon.
I can jump in. I really appreciated that take. My question was going to be, you mentioned in your application about relevant experience, different things, and you jumped right into the issues, which I really appreciate. I found that fascinating, and I really like that our housing commission, sorry, is really looking for innovative ways to do so. Have you gone to any of the meetings, or have you been involved with the?
No, what I've been monitoring actually is Wisdom House in Jericho.
Okay.
And I also, because I have a friend in Duluth, was looking at something which was a corollary of that. Duluth is interesting because its climate is very, very similar. And it's managed to use a co-op model to develop some large complexes, primarily for seniors, people over 55 is what they've done. But they've done it on a co-op basis, which allows a buy-in of, say, like $46,000 at the low end for the scale, and then $1,000 a month, including heat and air conditioning. With a small balcony, the possibility of gardens, a cooperative woodworking center, art center, library. And I thought, well, how is it that they can do it there in that climate? And it's a little bit close to the concept of Wisdom House as a small village. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Wisdom House, but it's been on the drawing board for about 5 years in Jericho, and I've been involved in those meetings since then. It was the idea of a couple of artists who are older and who have skills and would like to teach and be able to continue. If you're an artist, which I am, the idea of moving into a concrete space where you have no space to work, you can't possibly teach, you're not close to anybody, it's very disheartening because it doesn't meet the needs of quality of life. And so the Wisdom House, like its name, has to do with very modest market rate housing within a village with a clinic, with a rehab pool, with a community space, all in a walkable community within a small unit. So it's actually happening down the road. When you have that kind of cooperative, intentional community, you also have some different kinds of funding models. And you also have different zoning models. It took Jericho 5 years to get to the point that they could create that without creating a precedent for large developments that they didn't want to come into town. So it's challenging both to put together financially because you're dealing with ownership as opposed to renting, and you're not dealing with subsidies. So people have equity in their properties. And I think that's a very exciting model, and I'd like to see some of that happen here instead of having to go down the road.
No, that's fascinating. Thank you for sharing that, and I think your knowledge would be a great add to the board.
Other board questions?
I was gonna ask you if you had some ideas on things you'd like to do, but you covered that pretty good. So I'm gonna go in the direction of have you been in a situation in any of your time volunteering that you've I don't want to say the lead, but been involved in getting a change in order for some of these projects to happen, or are you familiar with the process
I'm involved
of
in
that?
Acres right now, which is dealing with the Amazon project. My co-partner and I started Acres in terms of dealing with that. When I lived in St. Johnsbury, I created an art center a visual arts center within Catamount Arts, which had just been a performance center up until that point. We had classes, developed facilities, got equipment, found funding, wrote grants.
Awesome.
And I worked with Cove as a member of the board and as a particular focus on medical advocacy during my tenure there in terms of policy.
Awesome. Thank you for that.
Andy?
I'm going to ask the question that I ask everybody. What does being a public servant mean to you?
Listening.
Sorry?
Listening.
Listening?
Yes, it means hearing people and assuming that you aren't the only person with ideas. And it means being eclectic and being willing to do what it takes to make a good idea become a reality.
All right. Thank you.
Kendall?
I have two questions, actually. The first question I would ask is, does Essex currently allow the type refurbishment of old buildings that you mentioned?
I don't know if it does, because development in Essex has been in the hands of developers for new buildings. I'm not aware of reuse and repurposing so much. I think zoning has a lot to do with that, because it's divided into commercial and residential, and the potential is for crossing the line between those two. And I don't know if the zoning in Essex allows you to do that. I mean, if it doesn't, and there were the opportunity to develop additional housing that way, it might require a different kind of zoning than exists currently. I don't know.
That's a good answer, because I don't know either. My other question was, sometimes you might run into conflicts on a board. How would you handle a conflict with somebody that had a completely differing opinion than you?
Well, I think I would start by listening and try and understand where they're coming from. I think that one of the things that seems important to me, and I don't always see it when I go to the various meetings, is a holistic approach to things. I see a lot of siloing, of looking at something in one category and another, and it's very clear to me that there are interrelationships and overlays between one set of ideas and another. And so, of course, there are going to be conflicts, because if you're looking at economic development as separate from housing, or if you're looking at zoning separate from economic development, you can't really, because they're interrelated, you can't really separate them. So you have to find a way to make them work together. I think it's okay to acknowledge that there's a difference of opinion. I think you have to start there and say, no, I don't agree with you for this, that, the reason, but is there some place where we can agree? And can we start from that basis and work from there? Not all conflicts can be resolved. I mean, that's just a fact of life. You don't get to be 82 without realizing that,
Thank you.
And Lois, my only question for you is, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I don't understand who or what entity within the town could initiate or create the kind of zoning that would give more flexibility to housing, since it doesn't fit, those kinds of ideas don't fit under existing zoning as I understand zoning.
Yeah. So if something were not to fit within existing zoning, that would be up to the Planning Commission to consider and undertake potential amendments to our zoning regulations. So it would be within the statutory authority of the Planning Commission.
And I also don't understand the same thing with the funding mechanism, because the kind of partnerships, for example, like Champlain Housing Trust, I mean, they already do cooperative housing with that kind of model. I don't know that there are that many examples of it locally. There are like maybe 5 examples across this part of the state.
And I think that's one question that the Housing Commission, and Greg and Karen can keep me honest here, that the Housing Commission is currently working through is various funding mechanisms and triggers, like public-private partnerships, such as a local housing trust that would be funded through the municipality.
That was one of the things that I was thinking would be very, very good, because done that way, you could put something out to bid and have some competitive advantage there.
Yeah, yep. So the zoning, the funding mechanisms, public-private partnerships, it's my understanding that is well within the mission of the Housing Commission as an advisory commission to the Select Board to come back with recommendations and thoughts for how we can accomplish housing goals. Whether that be through the Planning Commission with zoning changes or inclusionary zoning to incentivize housing, or through funding mechanisms, which would be within the purview of the Select Board.
So, and does that also interface with the regional planning? That, I mean, you wouldn't have to go to that level.
For a simple zoning change, no, but there may be instances where we would want to make sure that, the zoning is in keeping with neighboring communities. So there would be not an official review, but it would be, we would get the opinion as a town from CCRPC, which is the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, to make sure that there is that consistency across town city borders.
We'd want to make sure it doesn't conflict first with the town's plan, the town comprehensive plan. And as part of that, it also looks at the Regional Planning Commission's comprehensive land use plan, and as Tracy said, the other surrounding towns around us, to make sure that it's consistent with zoning development pattern plans from the local level up to the regional level.
Yeah, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, well, I thank you for your interest and I thank you for your time. Question for the board, understanding that this position has been posted for a couple of months, would the board like to discuss in executive? Would someone like to make a motion? Ethan?
I was just gonna ask if there was any other applications that were submitted. This is the only one, and if that was the case, I was gonna move that the Select Board appoint Lois Whitmore to the Housing Commission for the vacant seat that expires June 30th, 2028.
Thank you. Ethan, is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there any final discussion, or are you ready for the question? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Lois, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
And next up, we are going to interview and potentially appoint a volunteer to serve on Economic Development Commission or Committee. Anne, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me here tonight. My name is Ann Miller. I've been a 10-year resident of Essex, Vermont. And let's see, I wrote you a few things in my application. I have attended a Economic Development Committee meeting, and I sensed that it's a very small group. At least when I was there, it was still short, like 2 members, and now it's a short 1 member. My background is in new product development and in new business development, and this means understanding what unmet customer needs are, collecting the data, and understanding how I can translate that into a product that a customer would want to buy. So that's one thing. And then the other part of it is that's the product development. And on new business development, in some industries, new business development means it's like a code word for sales. But in the life sciences, new business development is you have a technology that I want to acquire. So I'm either going to license it, I'm going to option it, I'm going to pay you a royalty over time, I'm going to outright acquire your company. So I have been involved in a variety of transactions that are related to that. And I think one of the things that's really there's a part of me that says, at a philosophical level, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And how can I help the committee develop a robust business environment for Essex? And so for me, that's kind of drives me. I think I could be helpful here. One of the things that I think really is useful is to do a lot of outreach. And so you're talking to people about how their business is or what their issues are and how can we problem solve around that. So for example, I have been to every single farmer's market that we've had, except for the rained out ones. And when I was out of town, but I've been to all of them. I talk to the vendors every time. I ask them how it's going. If it's better at 5:30, is like I said to the vendor last week, tell me that you had more traffic at 3:30 than you did at 5:30. And he said, no, I'm sorry, it's been slow all day, right? So, but I go and talk to them all. I ask them, like, are you an Essex-based business or are you someplace else, right? How could your business grow? Would you like a commercial kitchen as an option for people who are home-based businesses here in Essex? So I have these conversations with people over and over again. The owner of the art gallery over in the Essex Experience, he's like, business is really hard. We've lost a lot of tourist business, so it's really like a struggle for him. And then I went to the National Guard open house, and there was a company there that makes the insulation that goes in the Gordini gloves. And so she shared that she was moving her business from Canada to the United States. So I said, come to Essex. And she says, we're going to go to Rouse's Point. And I'm like, no, that's the wrong answer. So my point being that I think that there's a lot of outreach to be done, and there's a lot of conversations, and that it's possible to, I think there's opportunity to grow business in Essex, but there's also a way to do that where we're engaging people and learning from them, not coming in with our own preconceived ideas of what it is. So sorry to be so long-winded. Anyway.
That's perfect. Board questions.
I'll go first. I was gonna ask if you had any prior experience volunteering on a board, and if you could share some experience
Sure.
from that board.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I have been a volunteer in many different circumstances. In the COVID pandemic, I was the volunteer executive director for a 150-person volunteer team that was all around the country. And our mission was to distribute authentic respiratory protection to people around the country at no charge. So to do that, we developed relationships with all of the different manufacturers, and then with cities, towns, because there was a lot of fake product in the market. In fact, I worked with the city, well, what is now the city of Essex Junction, to help them. And so I did that as a volunteer for 4 years. We did $35 million in revenue in the course of that business. I've also was volunteered in my church in my old town. I volunteered as a scheduler for Essex Youth Hockey. So I have volunteered in many different capacities.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. I think Essex Youth Hockey was that was a great volunteering experience.
Jen?
I really appreciate your energy, and I liked your idea of the outreach. I think that was wonderful. I know that the EDC has done a number of visits to businesses to get out in the community, which is great. In what you wrote in about your application and then the cover letter you sent in, you mentioned the town plan, and I'd be curious, what specifically in the town plan do you think is not being covered, and what would you want to focus on?
The thing for me is just, I'm not sure if I have to go back and reread my letter, but I think it's like not what I want to do, right? I guess is where I'm coming from. It's like, what does the town plan say that we're supposed to be doing, and like trying to make sure that we're driving things like how do we make sure everything it coalesces and is cohesive and driving towards the town plan. So there's like 5 things. There's like inclusion, right? There's let's see. Diversity, inclusion, sustainable, connected, a joy to live in, right? Those are what we call the community vision in the thing. And so it's like, how do we do that, right? Like I have my ideas, but it's not about what I want to do. It's like, what do we want to do collectively as a town? So that's all.
I really appreciate that. I have also seen, your involvement. You've spoken at some meetings. You've sent in some suggestions for the handbook.
Yeah.
You seem to be getting more and more involved. Why are you choosing this committee as the place you want to really dive into?
Well, it's an interesting question, honestly, because I look at so this is a very personal comment I will share with you, but longevity does not run in my family. I am the oldest in my family. My parents have been gone more than 20 years. And so I look at I tell my kids there's 1,440 write minutes in a day. And like, I don't want to waste my time. And I say that like not to be arrogant, but like knowing that I don't know my last moment, right? And so I looked around, like, where do my skills sort of fit? And I felt like I could be maybe helpful in that capacity. And at the same time, like, if I can't be helpful, I think the fair thing is to say is like, this isn't like a good use of my time. And, you know, I shouldn't do that. I will say that coming to these meetings, I have met more of my neighbors. Like, I had a lot of friends, my kids were younger, Essex Youth Hockey and like the Tree Farm Soccer and everything. My kids have gone to college now. I'm like, I need to have more connections with my neighbors. And it's been a really wonderful experience to meet more people in town and to come to understand them and, you know, what their own challenges are and try to work together to be a community of people. And that's really what has dragged me into this, if that makes any sense at all.
I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Andy?
You heard my question already.
Yes.
What is it? What does it mean to you to be a public servant? Yeah.
I think that, as Lois said, definitely to be listening, and especially to listen to the people whose voices sometimes get drowned out by people who are, you know, more vocal or more animated or just are more opinionated. And it's not just like, as I said, it's not what I want to do. It's not what's good for me. It's not what's good for my family, right? It's not even what's good for my friends. But it's like understanding as a community, what do we need? And that's, to me, is like just to be there and to drive forward on things in as selfless way as possible.
Thank you.
Over to you.
Yes. So this is a hard question for me to ask because I find your qualifications very compelling. But I'm also concerned because you have been very vocal in an opposition. So I'm a little bit concerned about how you would approach that type of a divisive issue on a commission.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, I feel like there are many different ways to do something. There are lots of different ideas about how to solve a problem, and that very often the answer to the problem isn't even the one that's in the room that we're currently envisioning. There's some other idea that we haven't yet considered. So I don't feel, as much as I have been opinionated in some things and working for change in a positive way that I think for the community, I don't feel at all that I would be like, I certainly think that there's room for other opinions and we should talk about them and ask questions and come to understand our differences. I mean, at the very end, you could say, well, reasonable people agree to disagree, but that's not where I usually settle most of my arguments, except for maybe with my children. For the most part, you know, there is a place where there's mutual interest and mutual alignment, and I think we're all much more alike than we are different from one another. And especially in our day and age, it seems where there's a lot of divisiveness. I really feel like compelled to find that common interest rather than, you know, stake a hill, you know, us put a stake on a hill and say, you know, I'm gonna, you know, die on this hill, proverbially speaking.
Okay, thank you.
All set? Okay. My only question is, do you have any questions for us?
You know, I would be very interested to get your impression of what you think the Economic Development Commission has done well. If there's something that comes to mind to you, that's putting you guys on the spot. So I'm just like looking back, there seems to have been a large gap in the documentation for the commission. And I've been like, I know that they have some research underway now. I just didn't know if there was something that came to mind as like an exemplar that you would say, like, this is what we should strive to be like. Or maybe it's a different commission.
I'll go ahead and go first, and if anybody has thoughts, you can chime in. For me, I love the concept of the site visits, right? Actually getting out into the community and speaking directly with the businesses to be that voice on the ground and ears on the ground. More importantly, to hear directly from the businesses to understand what the outstanding needs are, where the pain points are, what's going well, where there's opportunities for improvement. But having those one-on-one conversations, from my perspective, is just invaluable.
Great. That's a great input.
Anybody wants to?
I'll go. I was gonna echo what Tracy just said. So I'll give you something that's kind of like in the middle that I think is a great idea, but I'd like to see not completion, because there has been a portion of it completed, but the fruition of the bearing tree to come to full fruit. The business registration. So there's I think it was right before COVID or around COVID, there was a mission to have a list of all the active businesses, addresses, phone numbers, emails, kind of have like a business registry that things could be sent to, and notifications or anything that the town could help with. There's a version of it that's completed, but I feel like it should be revisited, and that's something that's always piqued my interest. But I've been, me and Don Fleury actually attended a couple of the site visits, and it's really cool what they're doing. So other than that, I don't have a ton of knowledge about the commission, but I am one of a fan of economic development. So
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Anyone else?
Just building off of what Ethan said, I think that, the commission has gone through, ebbs and flows of effectiveness, and I think recently it's been the building years, and I'm very excited to see the seats being filled and the more energy being kind of breathed into the group, because I think they do have an opportunity, as you mentioned, to create a lot of change, or at least ideas, and advise. They are the commission that advises this board,
Right.
and I'm excited to see where they go.
Andy, Kendall, anything? No pressure? All right. Well, Anne, thank you for your time. And Greg, I'll ask proactively, were there any other applicants for this position?
No.
Okay. So I'll bring it back to the board. Your options remain the same. We can have a discussion in an executive, or I think Ethan might be raising his hand to make a motion.
make the motion that the Essex Selectboard appoint Ann Miller to the Economic Development Commission for the vacant seat with a term that would run through June 30th, 2028.
Thank you, Ethan. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. Any final discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Welcome. Our next agenda item is brought down from the consent. Our new 5C is approved minutes from August 18th. Ethan, you moved to remove this from consent, so I'm gonna give you the floor to ask questions or clarify.
Yeah, so I have kind of like a procedural question thing, but my concern is that the minutes aren't capturing the full extent of the conversation, and I was curious as to, some conversations it feels like there's a lot more information in them depending on the night or conversation, and then some things seem to be summarized more, but they don't truly reflect the words that were said in the recording. So I was curious if I needed to transcribe the minutes and bring the changes forward, or if there was a way for the minutes to be re-looked at without me doing it on a weekend.
Typically what we've done is board members bring forth corrections. And then if there's disagreement above the board as far as recollecting what happened, then we would ask staff to, take a listen or go back and find out what the conversation did entail.
Okay.
But that's past practice.
That was why I brought it up, because I feel like the minutes don't reflect, specifically in business items 6A from last meeting.
Okay.
There was a lot more said than what's written
How
down.
would you prefer to proceed? Do you want to hold off on the minutes
On approval
until
of the minutes until we
next?
can look at,
And we can all,
kind of take a look at it, listen to the. I mean, I don't know what the procedure is. That's why I pulled it from to have a discussion about it. But
Shannon?
I was actually going to raise this offline, but I think it's a great conversation to have publicly, and I hope that it is recorded. I know that the way I understand it is that we have a person or a service that does the minutes offline from the recordings that they then summarize. Is that accurate?
Yes.
There's no one in this room that's taking them right now, and there's no. What are the procedural criteria that we say we want this level of detail, or what does that look like?
Sure. So to take a step back first, Vermont open meeting law speaks to what's required of minutes. It's
Motions.
It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
Who was in attendance, what motions were made, what actions were taken, results of the vote. That's it. The guidance I give to the people who take our minutes, and it has evolved over the years. We used to have somebody in the room every single meeting. They would be here for the entirety of the meeting. They'd go back, they would take notes, then write up the minutes, go back, listen again. Now that we have a hybrid meeting and that option recordings, we don't have to have somebody here. So we have people who can either watch online or they can go do it when time allows for them. So it's a bit more flexibility, a bit more efficient with our time. The direction I give to them is to go above and beyond the bare minimum that statute requires and try to capture the gist of the meeting or of each business item. So, 1 to 3 paragraphs depending on the complexity of it. Part of that is our minutes typically end up being 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 pages long on a long meeting. There's been times in the past where it's not been a transcript, but it's been 20, 30 pages. This was years ago. We, as staff and as minutes takers, kind of look at it as these meetings are recorded. It's not meant to be a transcript. We do have the videos of that. Town Meeting TV does a great job capturing these, and people can always go back and watch the video to see exactly what's happened. So it's really trying to balance, a summary of what's happening without quoting every single thing, so people can get a sense of what was happening with each discussion item. And then if they're really curious as to the meat of it, there's always the opportunity to go back and watch the video.
Is that the same instructions you give to the committees when they prepare their minutes?
Less so. I think we have that in the handbook that's coming up later on tonight, but have sort of let each committee decide how they want to do it and what works for them, as long as it has that bare minimum that statute requires.
Sure. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Kendall?
I would just add that since we are in the digital age, I would find it extremely helpful if all the minutes had a link to the video. Because it's very hard to find sometimes the minutes and the videos and the video of what minutes you're looking at searching. So I just wondered if this is all done electronically. So wouldn't it be possible to add a link onto the minutes to the specific video where that meeting took place? Just a suggestion.
We can look into it. I think so. We would want to make sure that the timing aligns with when Town Meeting TV has their link and when our minutes have to be posted. I think there's overlap there to do that, but that's just something I would want to confirm.
Okay, even a direct link to the
The portal.
the portal
It's a good idea.
would help. So, just a suggestion.
Ethan?
I'm just thinking, so for sake's time, would the right thing to do to be to table the minutes and bring them back for approval at the next?
There's not a motion, so there's nothing to table, but we
just
can,
not
we can
approval.
just agree to bring them back. However, Andy, I would like to hear what you have to say.
Our charter requires us to approve minutes in the very next meeting that we have.
Oh, right.
So per our current charter, until it gets
Yeah.
changed, if it gets changed, we're directed to approve them tonight.
There's no, sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
There's no language in there for it being pulled off from the consent agenda and possible action to be taken on the minutes for
No,
it to
this-
be tabled.
This was a charter change from back in March that did pass. It did not get taken up in the legislature. So the existing language does say that they must be approved at the very next meeting, which, I mean, we've broken the law in that regard before by not doing so. But I would say if everyone is comfortable with that, it is our past practice to make sure that they are adequate before approval, but Andy does rate as a valid point.
I mean, if it's supposed to be approved and then that fails the vote, isn't it the same thing as us tabling it?
It fails, which means we need to take another bite at the apple, or we
Yeah.
could take another bite at the apple at the next meeting if we reconsider the motion, but then we do not have official minutes and we are further in violation of the things.
So do we want to go through the video and read the minutes while we watch the video?
I mean, the other option is we could approve tonight, and I do believe we can amend at our next meeting. If anything is found that doesn't jive with what we approved, that's also an option that would be in keeping with our charter, in keeping with statute, and in keeping with Robert's rules.
Wait,
So-
hello.
So we'd have to do a motion to amend.
At the next meeting, yeah.
There are hands up in the public, just
Yep. I just want to make sure that the board is, thank you.
Betsy keeps trying to get your attention.
Would someone like to make a motion, or shall we move to public comment? Seeing no motion, I'm going to move over to public comment. Sharon Zukowski, I see your hand up first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi. Thank you for noticing who put their hands up first. You're a very good chair. That's not why I'm. I have a huge problem with meeting the minimum standard set by the state for minutes. States set standards at the minimum because that's the lowest bar you want to meet. They don't. It shouldn't be our goal. And as to going and finding a video, sometimes the videos are like 3 or 4 hours long, and you can't search a word in them. You might be searching for. We had an interview today, Ann Miller, and in the minutes you can get that in a second, or the handbook. You can't do that, and I think to have detailed minutes, I don't mean like every word someone said. You establish sort of a memorial of why you made that decision, and we have that problem in Development Review Board all the time. Who made this? Why? What was the intent of 20% slopes? What was the intent of this? You can find the intent by searching the minutes. I just don't think we should be shortening things to 3 paragraphs. And I don't think I've ever seen minutes that were 30 pages long. But I mean, we shouldn't have them that long, but it really should detail what happened, what was said, and why things were said. Thanks.
On topic of the minutes specifically on August 18th, I know the board took a
No,
little
I
bit
understand, but that was just
of leeway.
it
But
was
but
brought
yeah.
up. It was brought up. So
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
I think Lorraine was.
Lorraine, I see your hand next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in terms of the minutes that were taken, again, what a timely conversation. I think it would be very helpful. I believe that the best and most efficient thing to do in 2025 is to have transcriptions through AI from the video or from wherever, and that's summarized. And the transcription would then be searchable. Videos are not searchable. So it would take you much longer and our staff much longer to go back through that video for what you disagree with, or, in terms of the content of this disparity. Because the intent is so important, especially in Vermont law. Intent is primary to our judiciary system in Vermont. And often what's happening now is with the summary, it's hard to get the intent. And certainly there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. I don't, having worked for a long time in tech and things that I do in data, it's a small file to do a transcription, and then that would be a link to the transcription. You could link to the video, and there would just be the summary above. But the important part and the efficient part is the searchability, and that helps us with the accuracy. And I think it would be pretty quick to see if the intent was captured when you do it that way. Thanks.
You're up next. Comments on August 18th.
Thank you. That's Betsy Dunn. I'm an Essex resident and I live on Cindy Lane. So I don't get this at all about you can't do it, have a vote. If you had 2 absentee people there, you would not be able to, you don't have a quorum and you can't accept the minutes. And so it has to wait to the next meeting. So although this isn't exactly that case, I don't see why you can't use that as a precedent. Thank you.
Is there any public comment in the room on this topic?
Logan Skinner, I'm a Burlington resident, but on behalf of Town Meeting TV, just generally for the YouTube videos, there should be clickable agenda titles so you can move through the videos faster if you want to find a specific conversation.
Thank you. With that, I will bring it back to the board. If you would like to approve, if we want to go outside of our charter and save them till next meeting. Andy?
I move approval of the minutes of August 18, 2025.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
I will second that for discussion.
Thank you, Kendall. Is there any final discussion, or are we ready for the question?
I just want to give one example on line 76. It says, answering a question from S. Jackson, and then it goes on to say what the answer to the question was. How do we know what the question being answered was if we don't know what the question is in the minutes? That's just one example.
That's a good example.
I will offer another option that the board could consider is that I believe attempting to do our due diligence is important. And as such, we do now have a motion to approve. There is the option to table this motion, which means we were attempting to approve our minutes and then tabling it to a time certain, which would be our next meeting. It's not completely in line with our charter, but at least we made an attempt to be in line with our charter.
Yep.
Shannon?
I think that's a wise move. I think we have begun the approval process, so therefore I think that Ethan highlights some good points. I am, for the record, I'm very grateful for the service we have, and I think it's great that we have at least something that's, here. I think that one suggestion that we could do as a hybrid in the future is putting timestamps in where topics come up so people could then go to a recording and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. We can figure this out offline, but I motion that we table this so we have time to edit this to a more detailed level.
Okay. To a time certain till our next meeting?
Till our next meeting.
Okay. Motion to table, is there a second? Thank you, Ethan. Is there any discussion on the motion to table? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion to table till our next meeting, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thanks, folks.
Great suggestion.
So that will come up next time. I would just urge the board to go through, listen to the recording, make your notes, and
A lot of errors.
come back. Our next item, potential discussion and potential action on well waiver requests in Chapter 10, which is our water use ordinance. I will note that there was a pretty involved memo in the file, understanding that the motion that was made at our last meeting, the vote was 2-2, which means that the motion failed, so the waiver is not granted. Our options here are to reconsider the motion should the board be willing. However, the only members of the board who can move to reconsider would be board members who voted on the prevailing side, which would be who voted against the motion, since the motion ultimately did fail. I will also say that in order to reconsider, new information or a changed situation would need to be present. So take that into consideration as you're deciding whether to move to reconsider. I don't know, do we have any additional information? I wasn't aware of any this morning.
Staff does not have any additional information. Mr. Von Gaal is here in the audience. I understand he has some information that he thinks is new and relevant and would like to present. But staff has nothing else that would make us reconsider our recommendation at this point.
Okay. Mr. Von Gaal, do you want to come forward for a moment, just so folks online can hear your responses and we can get them on the recording? Do you feel that you have additional information that would be pertinent to board members deciding whether to reconsider?
Yes, I do.
Okay, I'll give you a few minutes to introduce that and then bring it back to the board.
Okay. I just want to ask, though, if it does come up that we are going to hear it, then I would give my presentation afterward. Right now, I'd only be talking about new information that might affect it. Okay.
Correct. And just for general information, a motion to reconsider, should that pass, it would put the original motion back on the table, and at that point we would have further discussion on that motion. So right now we're only talking about any new information that may be pertinent to inform whether to reconsider.
Okay. So yes, I'll stick to the subject. Basically, new information is. I was trying to define what's new information, what's not. New information, as I've been corresponding with Greg, is that this should have nothing to do with my character. It was essentially a character assassination the last meeting, and I was not prepared for that. I came thinking that I had a slam dunk because I was satisfying the requirements for me to have the waiver. And then it turned into, no, even though it will not commingle and so forth, your character indicates that you will illegally commingle the plumbing. So anyway, so what I'm saying is the new information starts with the point that Greg, the Public Works, and Kendall stated very clearly that the reason that it should be denied is because of my character, that I would likely commingle and illegally tamper with the plumbing.
I will give you your time, but I would say that I did watch the full recording, and that was not my takeaway as far as like the total rationale of what.
Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
And I don't want to rehash everything that happened the last meeting. I want to give you the opportunity to present information that, may appear that a different result may be reflected. So I'd like to keep the topic to just that.
And I'd like to say and I really appreciate what Ethan said, because the minutes don't indicate at all what went on in the last meeting. I transcribed every word of those three statements from Greg, Kendall, and Public Works, and I could defute most everything said in those. It was unsubstantiated things. But okay, so I'll move on. But that's new information. Is this one was to be made clear that it's on the merits of my satisfying the requirements of from the ordinance and so forth from my presentation. So next thing is that I did get an official quotation from engineering construction company for putting in a new water line. At that time, I was making estimates from talking to people. So that quotation was $22,500 plus wetland delineation, plus any engineering drawing that would be required by Public Works. So I'm estimating to be $25,000. that I have some background, and I have that here if you want to see. I didn't make copies for everybody, but those are the numbers there. So that's new information. Other new information, I talked to engineering company, Bauman Consulting Engineers, a very big group that do this kind of work. And I was talking with the engineer that I've used quite a bit in the past when we did our program, and the big issue was about commingling, and he said that's a no-brainer. You know, everybody knows about backflow preventers. Backflow preventer, if you hooked them together, it could not put the water back from my commingling into the public water system done in a proper way. So that's information that was not brought up. Public Works has indicated in many times that they wanted to work with me to find an equitable solution. I have heard no recommendations for an equitable solution, such as let's put in a backflow preventer. They'll probably say, well, you'd put it in your basement and you tamper with the backflow preventer. They could put it in there right away. Put the backflow preventer where they could look at it 24/7 if they want to, and I could not tamper with it unless they saw that. So basically, those are the nuts and bolts. Those things are new information, and then basically that's all I have. That's essentially new information, and then Greg wrote me and said Public Works had new information as well, so they may want to join me here and talk about their new information. Thanks.
Thank you. Annie and Aaron, do you have any new information to share, Greg?
Yeah, I can
You
speak to
wanna-
that. That was
Okay.
when Mr. Von Gaal, I think at the end of the last meeting, had some other ideas. So I mentioned that we could bring it up tonight to take a look at it and hear what those ideas were. I said Public Works would be gathering some information. There's nothing new to present from Public Works. It was comment I made, I think, a week or two ago, and we don't have anything new at this point.
Okay. So with that, I will bring it back to the board, understanding that Kendall and Andy were the board members who voted in opposition. I'll just ask the question, would either of you like to make a motion to reconsider? Yes.
Madam Chair, I appreciate that. And I was going through, doing a lot of weekend reading on Robert's Rules of Order. In the preface of Robert's Rules of Order, they talk about the purpose of the rules is to make sure that meetings are run in a material way that decency is preserved. And the fact of the matter is, when you think about how it's used, it's usually in a body of, 25 members or something. We have a unique situation here where we have a 5-person board, and we're talking about that the opposition, from what I voted, is the prevailing way when it was a 2-2 tied vote. But the real reality of it is that if the third member of our board happened to be on the side that I was, you'd have a majority not in a prevailing side. So I think that we're in a bit of a gray area here in that there really isn't a prevailing side, there's a default side. And we're going against the whole purpose of Robert's Rule, trying to follow rules that aren't being decent to the situation. When we've rehashed this, we've gone through the information here, we've heard him a month ago talk about the situation. There's problems on both sides. The town put a third head in there. That was a mistake the town made. He obviously, drilled a well before getting all the permits and different things. That was a mistake on that side of the table. This is not a black and white case. And I would actually put it forth to my members that are supposedly in this defined prevailing side that it's the decent thing to reopen this so that we can actually get a full actual vote on this and not just default to the situation. There's also in Robert's Rules of Order, there's a whole section about suspension of the rules. I would motion that we suspend the rules on this to allow for any members of this board to ask for a reconsideration. And that is an official motion on the floor.
I think that we're in the middle of a discussion, so we're gonna finish that discussion before we go anywhere else.
I believe the discussion was there a vote for reconsideration?
Yeah, and that was the only question that I asked for, and it was a no. My statement was going to be a few things. The prevailing side, it's very clear that a tied vote means it fails. Therefore, anyone who voted against the motion is on that prevailing side. I have zero interest in overriding a vote that was very clearly taken, and there was over an hour of discussion by this board just because my personal circumstances did not allow me to be here. The board spoke at their last meeting, and I don't think that it warrants a second bite at the apple, so to speak, just because one member was not here. It's also clear to me that I don't want to approach this as though it's an individual issue. I would much rather take the approach of really looking into the ordinance and fixing it for all residents rather than carving out for one specific instance. So I would rather look at this from a community-wide perspective rather than one person perspective.
Can I speak for a minute? So on that though, how long does this relevant case have to wait for a decision or resolution to be made? Because there's no existing timeline right now. It's just, we're not going to help you.
Well,
That's our
it's
message.
my understanding that Public Works is already looking at the ordinance, Greg, keep me honest here, to identify what would be appropriate, where the pain points are, in order to bring back to us. We can solidify that via a vote this evening to make it official that that's what the board would like to see. But again, I would rather focus on the entirety of our community instead of dealing with a one-off situation that has been back and forth for, 5 years, 7 years, and still hasn't gained resolution.
Relevant information to this case, there was no issue with the third water tap until he held wedding events at the property.
And at this point, we are now rediscussing
But you're
prior
stating
motion
opinion. You're stating opinion.
on how to move forward with approaching the ordinance as opposed to a one-off situation. So there was no motion to reconsider. So now we're moving along to the second part of the memo.
And I'm going to
which
appeal
is,
the ruling of the chair.
Would the select board like to officially ask staff to come back with proposed ordinance changes in order to move forward with a standardized and streamlined, repeatable approach?
Okay.
Yes.
So I'm going to call point of order because Shannon called for suspension of the rules. I seconded, and it was ignored. And then there was also an appeal of the ruling of the chair, which was also ignored.
Andy?
In our orderly conduct of business, only the chair can ask for a motion. So if the chair hasn't asked for a motion, I don't think we can make one.
And our orderly conduct of business comes before Robert's Rules of Order. It only goes to Robert's Rules of Order if it is not specifically addressed in our orderly conduct of business.
So we're going to pause and pull that up real quick to show that.
The orderly conduct of business?
Yeah, where it says clearly that.
Sure, we can do that. Yeah, you have the screen, so it would probably make more sense to do it that way.
While that's being pulled, may I make a comment?
Sure.
In the minutes that weren't approved, it was stated, and I quote, Mr. Duggan suggested that the applicant bring the issue back to the full board at a future meeting. Obviously, this was not the applicant coming forward. This was us coming forward, or the, whoever set the agenda, you and the town manager, talking about, rules and regulations and what is proper here. And obviously, this is our first meeting after the last meeting in which, the ordinance or the clause of Robert's Rules says the next day on which a business meeting is held, new information, so on and so forth. So I understand why we're talking about that now. That said, the whole question about reconsideration that we started this conversation with was if there's a, and I quote, new member, new information or a changed situation. In my mind, a changed situation is there's 5 members here now instead of 4. Is that not adequate for having a reconsideration vote?
I would say no. That is not pertinent to the topic. That is not information that is substantially.
But it's a changed situation. It's a dual clause in the clause that we're talking about.
I disagree.
So I was wrong. This says that only the chair can call for the vote, not for a motion. So you can make a motion, but the chair is the only one that can call for the vote. Sorry, my apologies there.
I remember that differently as well.
It's top 10.
So if that's the case, is that motion valid in the second, and therefore we can motion to suspend the rules to actually have a vote for reconsideration by any member of this board instead of just this defaulted gray area of a prevailing side?
Ask that question again. The motion to
We just read
suspend
that.
the
It said that
rules.
motions could be called outside of when the chair recognizes. So therefore, I made the motion. Ethan then seconded. Are we going to get a vote?
What rules are you asking to be suspended?
I'm asking Robert's rules about the prevailing side to be suspended so that anyone on this board could bring this topic back and forth. I totally understand what you're saying about we need precedent, we need different things like that. That's a bigger issue about changing the ordinance. I think talking about this issue right now for this individual case is important.
I will not be calling for a vote on that motion because I think it is a very slippery slope and it sets a very dangerous precedent that anytime anyone doesn't like the way a vote goes, that they can bring it up and bring it up and bring it up. And that is the entire purpose of the reconsideration portion of Robert's rules, to prevent that very thing from happening.
But
And
there's
it-
no clear definition of the tie votes. I mean, there's mention of 2/3 selection, but it just says that the tie vote is is technically a denial, but it remains status quo. So it's not a true denial. It's not a true majority of the board. All decisions shall be passed through via the majority of the board, otherwise reverted to ruling of the chair, and the ruling of the chair can be appealed by any select board member at the meeting.
And a tie vote fails. That is very clear.
It says remain status quo right in Robert's rules.
Andy?
Oh, I was just going to say that in order for a vote to pass, it requires a quorum of the select board to vote approval, which is 3 votes. And so if you don't get 3 votes,
Andy,
fails. It's like similarly, if we had a meeting where there were only 3 members present, all votes would have to be unanimous because that 3 members is a quorum. So without 3 affirmative votes, the vote fails.
to make this clearer, Andy, I would ask you to make a motion to reconsider.
Gotcha. Okay. I make a motion to reconsider.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor of reconsidering the initial motion, please say aye.
Staff recommends that we wait till the next meeting.
All those
In
in
the
favor,
memo.
all those in favor
We're not
of
gonna listen to staff.
reconsidering the original motion, please say aye.
Says, should the select board
All those
disagree, a
opposed,
motion
please
and
say nay.
Staff
Nay.
requests
Nay.
time to thoroughly review and consider the new information at the next
Ethan,
meeting.
are you abstaining? Or are you voting yes?
I'm voting yes.
Okay, then the
This
motion,
isn't-
the
this
motion
isn't
to reconsider fails
Point of order.
2-3. I think that makes it cleaner and clearer
Yep.
and puts a period on it, so then we can move on to our next topic, which is whether we would like to see changes to the overall ordinance to serve the entire community. Is there any discussion on that topic? Andy?
I'm in favor of that.
Okay. Ethan?
Is this warned properly for a vote tonight?
For what? I need
The
more
memorandum
information.
for the vote that was just taken?
Yes. Potential action, and it's in the memo recommendation that the select board direct the town manager to propose amendments to Chapter 10 water
No,
use ordinance.
I'm talking about the vote that was before.
Yes, it is in the memo. There is potential action. It doesn't say what potential action is in there. But in the memo, it clearly states that a reconsideration would be needed to move forward. So to move us along, I'm going to make a motion
I think
that the select board ask staff to propose amendments to Chapter 10, the water use ordinance. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Andy. Is there discussion on that item?
There's a possibility that staff could come back and say that they don't recommend it, so, but the way you worded the motion, you're directing them to come back with amendments. I think we should ask them to investigate
Yes.
potential
That
amendments.
was my intent. Thank you for interpreting that.
It's also 20
that
years
clear?
old.
So there's a motion and a second for staff to investigate and identify whether any amendments to Chapter 10, the water use ordinance, would be appropriate to come back to us at a future time. Shannon.
Kendall's hand was first, but I'll go after.
Kendall.
I was just going to comment that I would like all the amendments that do not include criteria for approval of a well in the water district. I'd like other options than a well. Make that's clear that staff will look for those options as well.
Shannon.
That's all I would ask.
The ordinance, as it reads right now, says there is an opportunity for the select board to approve a waiver, but there's no criteria for that. So I think it's necessary that a situation be outlined in which a well, such as this situation, that doesn't touch the water source, could have been approved. I personally can't imagine a more clear-cut situation, so I'm looking forward to what the staff recommends for what's already in that ordinance as a carve-out for us to have approved something.
Clarity in having a
Prescription.
criteria is
Yes.
extremely important. I agree with that. Is the board ready for the question? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. I'll allow a quick one. If you want to come forward so folks online can hear you, again, please keep it brief. Please keep it civil.
I think what happened just now is that you're going to be looking at the idea of me using the public water for 4 points of use, but we will not be discussing using the well anymore. Is that what just happened?
No, what just happened is we're looking at this from a community-wide lens and addressing it through the full ordinance, not only talking about your specific instance.
So for I'm only thinking now, right now, my specific incidents. What does that mean for me? Because you want to understand, I have a residence and the barn has no water. So if you say, okay, we're going to start studying the idea of another method for me to have water, that could take, what, a week, a month, 2 months? I have no water in a residence and on the barn. So there's no timeline or anything, but I think that's what just happened, is that I'm not going to be able to use the well. Is that true?
That's correct.
And you know, this, I've got 150 years this barn has had water, and now the town is telling me I can't have water. And the ordinance clearly says reasonably be able to hook up to the town water.
Correct.
which
I would direct you to your planning commission approval that had conditions that needed to be met in order to move forward.
And the town made a big mistake by they supervised the trench
Sir,
the
sir,
plumber-
we're not going to get into a back and forth and rehash the entire issue that happened at the last meeting.
Do you realize the implications of this for me?
I realize the implication actually, I realize that there were issues on both sides. And at this point, nothing from status quo right now is changing because we need to rectify the entire situation.
When will that happen? Tomorrow, maybe, so I could get it going.
We're not going to have ordinance changes by tomorrow or
When?
when
Month?
Public
2
Works
months?
comes back and.
Through cold weather. So in the cold weather, I mean, I'll be.
Sir, I would love to have a conversation with you
Could you
offline.
give a timeline, just that I could know when I could have some water to a residence? Is there any timeline at all?
It is status quo. It's what has been in place at your residence.
For the last month, because before that it had water. I was pressured by the town to remove the meter and curb stop. I had no choice. I was told I was not supposed to be living in my home without a CO, and I couldn't get the CO until I removed that. So I said, remove it. The person living in the mobile home had to leave the mobile home, hopefully was going to come back as soon as I could get water, because I thought this was a no-brainer. And
Sir,
you're-
we're not going to rehash this. We have ordinances for a reason, and everyone needs to abide by those ordinances, by the processes, and by the procedures that are in place within our town.
And it doesn't seem like it bothers you too much that this is a very, very unjust situation that's happening.
I'm sorry you feel that way.
It's obvious.
We're going to move along to our handbook for boards, committees, and commissions. So we're past this topic.
Just think Public Works should consider reinstalling that third feed until this.
Okay, so we're going to move along to consider first approval of handbook for boards, committees, and commissions and their staff representatives. We first saw this in May of this year. We're now in September. Folks, just a reminder that there is a rule of order in this meeting not to have side conversations and not to interrupt the board while we're having our meetings. I would ask you to be cognizant and respectful of that. So handbook for boards, committees, commissions. Tammy, hi, we're seeing you again.
Hi, yes. As you mentioned, this was presented to the public in May. And then there have been subsequent select board discussions on June 2nd and August 4th. Part of those discussions were various edits and also assuring that we've had an opportunity to provide this document to boards and committee members, current members, for feedback. Which seemed to have been a struggle for a little bit, but we actually went through and crossed all T's and dotted all I's, and it has been in everybody's hands at this point. And so we've received some feedback, and so what I've got put together tonight and what's in your packet is the continued draft, which every change that we've made to date is marked. Some of the changes were like during this time period, we had new open meeting law changes, so we had to make some changes there. There are some, other minor, whether it's wording changes that just because something sounded redundant. And at the last meeting, we had, there were several people who made comments. So what I thought I would do is put together a sheet, I guess, basically, that just gathered all of the comments. I watched the video and gathered all of the comments that were brought to the meeting. In addition, we received a couple of written comments. One is from Hubie Norton, one is from Sharon Zadowski. Those are also in your packet. With Sharon's, I took what she is proposing against what we have in here so that you could see a difference as far as like what she's proposing to strike and add. We considered all of these comments, including the written comments, and made recommendations based on what I have put in green. As I chose green because we have red and blue going on over here, so we're gonna go with green. I know there's so many colors. So that's kind of our response to some of those comments. A lot of them we made some changes. They're good suggestions, and so we went ahead and clarified different points or added some different things. I think that's about it. So I guess we're looking for any further questions and suggestions, and looking for that first approval.
Questions from the board? Janet.
Tammy, thank you. It's May, so we're what, 5 months out almost. Thank you so much for you and all the staff, as well as all the board members and their committees and different things that really worked to get this to where it is now. I really appreciated the attachment you had, where it actually, as you mentioned, went every suggestion from a board, every suggestion from a member of the community was covered. So I think we've really been thorough on this, and I appreciate that. And every time I look at it, I'm sure I see one or two other things.
Right.
Is this appropriate to suggest two suggestions to the? Okay, perfect. On page 12, we talk about staff should consult with the board chair, yada, yada, yada. I think that should be a shall, not a should. I think it's important to really solidify those relationships and make sure that, especially on, let me just pull that up real quick so I have it in front of me, that it is a partnership that creates it and not just one over the other. It's
Are you talking about the second, or like the second paragraph under agenda?
no.
I think we did change that. Okay,
I was talking about.
Where are you exactly?
I can pull it up. Yes, it's the second paragraph. The staff representatives, it says, should consult with the chair on which items to include on the agenda. I think that should be a shall.
Oh, okay.
Minor change, but connotation matters. And then I mentioned this was something that came up during this meeting specifically. When we get back to the minutes, I think it would be a good practice that whether it's for this meeting or for all the committee meetings, when we mention a new topic on the agenda, that we actually put a timestamp as to where someone could find it in the video, so they could more quickly find things. Last one's a suggestion. Both these are suggestions, but take it as you will.
Andy.
I'm not sure what you mean by put a timestamp. Put it where?
So, for instance, for this meeting, we're on section 6E, I think, because we bumped things down. In minutes, you could put 6E, even hyperlink it, or just say, 1 hour and 10 minutes into the video as parentheses.
Okay, so the person who's writing the minutes would add in where the topic started. Oh.
It would make it so that, it's easier to follow. And then whether it's a link at the top that brings you to the resource center that has the recording of it,
okay.
You could then go back and see exactly, if you wanted to see a video transcript of exactly what was said, you could then more easily find it. Just a suggestion, or could be a best practice.
It sounds like Town Meeting TV is already kind of doing that too, so it may be an easy thing to
The sections,
For our meetings, but for committee meetings.
Right, so I'm
Right.
saying for
Yeah.
us to take as a practice.
Yeah, I think it's
consult with them to how is it easy.
Did I
using
respond to
technology
that?
to our benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just-
So I think the way that we're trying to approach this is that so each committee can come up with their best practice, what's going to work for each committee. And the only reason why I say this is because we actually have one committee that does do the AI minutes. They do have it, it's all done essentially for them. They have to review it, obviously for accuracy, and then approve it that way. But for that one committee, that's something new that they're trying, and they like that because nobody wants to go home and do the minutes, right? They don't have a minute taker. And most of the boards don't. So for them, adding is not necessarily a great option for them. And it takes more time. And for even some of the boards who do have a minute taker, the more that they add to that, the more there's going to be cost involved with that, because the minute taker is going to likely take longer to do the minutes, and we do pay them by the hour. So just a couple of things to consider. And that doesn't mean that you can't do what you want to do for select board, but that's the nice part about the handbook, is that it's saying at a minimum, this is what is expected. This is what the law is looking for. And but boards could, essentially say, well, this is how we want to do our minutes. And different boards might want different things. You could have different people come in. You have more turnover, I think, on your committees than you would, say, the select board. So they may have a different preference as well. But this leaves that open to them.
Great point.
Andy?
And I don't remember what open meeting law now is. All hybrid meetings need to be recorded, or is it all meetings need to be recorded?
It's all, it depends on if it's a non-advisory or an advisory board. So not all non-advisory, which would be your decision-making boards, must be recorded.
And how long do we have to keep those?
And normal retention guidelines, I believe, as far as minutes are forever, but the recorded minutes are not. You do not have to keep them that long. There is requirements for how soon you have to get them up online, but as far as retention, there's not.
So that's retention applies to
the written minutes.
The non-advisory. Do we hang on to advisory minutes forever?
We don't have
or
that
recordings of
right.
them?
We don't. I mean, we haven't been getting rid of them. We don't have a policy that says that, and there's nothing in the law that says we have to do that. But we have been keeping them.
We're keeping all of the recordings.
I have them all.
Okay. But that's just, there's no sense putting the timestamp in there if the recordings go away after a month. So that's where I was. That's the question I was trying to answer.
I did ask at one point, like, how long, like, if we make VLCT, I believe, is the one that answered this question. Like, if we make a recording, this was before open meeting law came around and said, hey, let's record minutes. And we were already recording them. And if I asked if I put it up on YouTube, and this is kind of like a version of the minutes, and how long am I required to keep them there? And they said, as long as you want. You don't have to keep that, because the only thing that the law applies to are those written minutes. So, I mean, if we start to get very congested traffic on our YouTube channel, and it's difficult to start searching and finding the recordings that you're looking for, we could consider at that point pulling them out and just storing them rather than having them up on YouTube. But
what I might suggest is, as a board, and this is gonna, I don't know what other phrase to use, but that we eat our own dog food, so to speak, and we attempt like the timestamps and see how it works before trying to put that into a handbook that would apply to all committees as a, thou shall do this, unless we've kind of kicked the tires on it first.
Great phrase. I've never heard that before.
Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll go ahead and ask for public comment on the handbook. If there is any, I'm seeing a hand in the room. Ken, come on up.
Good evening. Let me not advertise Glavo. This is the benefit of going to the EDC meetings, the business outreach. I encourage everybody to go. We're going to Levents, the next one. All right, where to start? Tammy, thank you very much for all your work on this, and I do see that some of my suggestions have been incorporated. However, there are a number of issues that remain.
Excuse me.
First of all, not all committees have had a chance to comment on it, discuss it as a committee. Conservation and Trails, we've had it on 2 meeting agendas. We haven't been able to get to it because our staff representative constantly tells us that our meetings need to be limited to an hour and a half and 2 hours. We'd love to get to it, but we're encouraged to end the meeting early, and we've been obliging. Economic Development Commission hasn't had it on their agenda at all. I think it's important that the committees themselves get a chance to talk amongst themselves in a public meeting about these changes. They're quite significant. Next. That one's so minor, I'm not even going to mention it, I think. Open meeting law highlights. Item A1, the second bullet, begins to talk about the town of Essex requires. But this was supposed to be open meeting law highlights. Why are additional town of Essex requirements being listed under the open meeting law highlights?
Do you know what page you're looking at?
It's on
Page 7.
Page 8,
Page 8.
the top.
It's 7 on my copy.
7 on the.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Bottom
So,
7.
so that seems to be in the wrong spot, at the very least. And it says that the town of Essex requires that all public boards to hold all regular and special meetings as hybrid meetings, including boards that are advisory. Now, as you know, and it does later then say that there's an exception. There are exceptions, only if approved by the town manager or assistant town manager. It's an odd juxtaposition to say all are required, and then later to talk about the exceptions. But I want to suggest that advisory boards need to make this decision. If necessary, the select board might want to impose and have it brought to them. I don't think staff is the appropriate individuals to be deciding whether or not an advisory board holds a meeting hybrid, online only, or in person only. You appoint us, and we report to you. If we decide that we need to have an off-site meeting, to have to go through a permission process, doesn't seem appropriate to me. Unless it's permission to be asked for and provided by the select board. Staff representatives. This is section 6, my Roman numerals, 6. The page is after 9, I guess it's 10. Makes a very important and strong point. Staff representatives have a limited amount of time to support their board's work. Absolutely true. Economic Development Commission has 2 hours per month. Conservation and Trails Committee, 4. For EDC, since we meet twice a month, pretty much the meetings cover the whole thing. But then, Section A lists a long, long list of staff duties. Quite a few. Onboarding new members. Seems to me that the committee chair should be the one doing the onboarding. Maybe the committee chair might ask for help from staff. But it's backwards, the way this is worded. It says that the chair of the board may wish to attend onboarding. This doesn't make sense to me. The chairperson should be introducing new members and enlightening them as to what their committees have been doing and what they might want to do, not the staff representative. Especially since staff representatives have a limited amount of time. Next bullet. Staff representatives are responsible for working with board members to create agenda. This is similar to what it was before. It's a little bit better. Board members are encouraged to suggest items that can be accomplished within the time scheduled for meetings. Well, who decides what can or can't be accomplished? Is it the staff or is it chairperson? I said this before and I'll say it again. Agendas are the responsibility of the chairperson. They can ask for as much help as they want, and they may or may not get it because staff has a limited amount of time available. But the responsibility needs to be with the chairperson. I hate it because I tried to not be the chairperson for Conservation and Trails. They stuck me with it again. It's a lot of work, and I recognize that, and I accepted it. The next bullet, ensuring that boards adhere to annual schedules, such as holding an organizational meeting. Well, I've got to tell you, the section on the organizational meeting is top notch. It's exactly the way I expect them to go. Only problem is, that's not the way they go. Every one I've gone to, not adhered to. So I'm going to sort of flip back to the section at the top where it talks about, as a town board, committee, or commission member, I acknowledge that I have received, read the title of this document, and will abide by all of its guidelines. Well, staff is the one who's responsible for starting the organizational meetings. Maybe staff should be signing this as well. Where is that responsibility? Volunteers have to sign and be responsible for what's in here. There's a whole list of things that staff is supposed to do. They don't have to sign. If they don't do it, which I'm telling you, they do not, what's the recourse? None. Organizational meetings, I've been to a number of them. Full slate. At my meeting, I had to help my chairperson conduct my own election. Ridiculous. Did I say chairperson? My own staff representative. What did I say? I forget now. Sorry. All right, staff representative. Facilitating communication between boards and select board. I thought I was communicating with the boards I'm supposed to advise as the chairperson. I can write a memo. I don't understand why staff needs to be in between my committee and the board that we're supposed to be advising.
Where are you?
I am on staff duties and responsibilities, bullet number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
From the bottom.
No, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong spot. 6, 7. Facilitating communication between boards and select board. That should not be the responsibility of staff. We're quite capable of writing our own memos. We have email. We can do these things. Trust me. And staff has limited time. Remember that. And I respect that. I try very much not to depend on our staff representatives to do stuff for us. I make my own agenda. I make my own reading file, find all the attachments. I do it all. I think it's my job to do that. That was the organizational meeting facilitating. Next, notify the manager's office of any changes to board membership and resignation. Well, Conservation and Trails just had a change. We have a new clerk. Happened a week ago. I don't know if staff notified management, but I do see as the last bullet that they're supposed to maintain the update the board's website. Checked it today, not changed. Going back to the beginning again, where is staff's responsibility in terms of signing this document? I don't see it. I see a long list of things that staff has to do and that board members have to do. We have to sign. It doesn't seem right to me.
So since you've asked that question multiple times, I'm actually going to answer it.
Oh, good.
That's part of their employment, which is under the purview of the town manager. He oversees all department heads who then oversee their own staff. The method by which you would provide feedback about a staff representative is outlined within the handbook.
Can I just chime in?
Yes.
Part of the reason we're trying to get this approved and presented and why we've drafted it is so we can have those clear expectations for staff to follow and hold them accountable if they're not following them.
Okay. Well, I'm telling you that they're not.
They're not in place yet. That's why we're doing it.
Also true, except for the organizational meeting thing sort of has been in place and that hasn't been followed either.
And chairs have reappointed, or chairs have ran, the previous chairs have ran the organizational meeting, and I've witnessed that with my own eyes.
Thank you for acknowledging that. It's a problem. I think some acknowledgement that staff has read it, that since we have to acknowledge it and say that, it seems to me it would be fair in some way. I'm not sure how to go about that. I understand what you're saying, that it's a factor of their employment. Next. The paragraph, boards shall not become involved in, okay, that's all fine. But it does say that boards and staff are expected to work together to develop annual work plans that fit within staff's capability and meet the goals of the board. Well, what happens if the board is quite capable of doing more than the staff might be capable of doing? Are we restricted to only what the staff can do? Or can we operate outside of that? I think work plans, probably the free labor. I mean, I would think that it's a great thing to have committees be able to do more than staff capabilities allow. As long as it's within the mission, not applying for grants or spending money that we're not allowed to do. The cleanup at Indian Brook is a great example. We don't expect the staff to show up for that. We do that on our own. So I think that's another problem. I think that needs to be reworded to say that boards and staff are expected to work through, boards are expected to produce a work plan, but not depend on staff beyond their capacity. Something along those lines. Section B, staff representative absence. Talked about this before. I'm not going to belabor it very much. I've said, I think, all I really want to say about this, except that regular and special meetings should not be dependent on staff attending. Some mechanism, and in this day and age, I think one can be divined. I've suggested a few. So that in an emergency, or we just don't have staff capacity, we can run our own meeting according to open meeting law. Figure it out. This last paragraph here, just before general guidelines, in attendance, in accordance with town electronic communication use policy, under no circumstances should the username or password be shared. Totally understand. I would just point out at the last, maybe 3 Economic Development Commission meetings ago, the staff person handed the staff computer to the chairperson to run the meeting. I'm sorry I don't report all these details. I don't like tattletaling. I would love to have had this at a second Saturday meeting, but the last one was canceled. The annual organizational meeting. Perfect. Well done. Exactly how I think it should be run. I would love to see staff actually do it. Meetings in general. The agenda. Posting the agenda is the key to a legal meeting. Our website is a roadblock. Open meeting law requires that agendas be posted on the website. But committees and their members have no access to the website. Must go through staff representative. So that's a roadblock. And I really think that something should be done to resolve that. A simple suggestion might be a fail-safe of some sort where if an agenda is presented to the town clerk X amount of time before the legal requirement, we could expect it to be warned properly, like it used to be in the old days when it would go on the bulletin board at 3 locations. That website, because it's a requirement of open meeting law, some mechanism, fail-safe mechanism has to be in place so that we can have a proper meeting without total dependence on staff if something was to go wrong. Second paragraph, meetings in general, still there. Any person may request that a new item be placed on the regular meeting agenda by informing the staff representative. Well, that's backwards. It should be the chairperson. Last sentence, the staff representative should consult with the board chair. Again, backwards. It should be this chairperson who should be consulting with the staff representative. Next paragraph. Board members may contact staff representatives to add items to the agenda by noon 2 days before the agenda is published. Why is it that staff seems to want to take the responsibility that should be that of the chairperson? Item number 4, changing the agenda. Well, this is kind of interesting. I think we all understand that we want to make sure that the public is aware of what's going to be discussed at a meeting and give them a chance to participate, especially items that are going to be acted on. But I would just point out that at the meeting tonight, action was taken on an item that was not on the agenda, and request to change an ordinance. Just saying, these things happen. And I think that that needs to be acknowledged. There is a spot in here where it does say if a quorum votes to amend an agenda, end of story, it's amended. You can add anything to an agenda, any action item you want. It's not a good idea. Sometimes you have to do it. And I think that the way it's worded now, it's very strongly saying that you shall not do it. And maybe some of those shall should be changed back to should. It happens. Saw it tonight. Look, I'm going to say it this way. Many times somebody, the wording is so strong. Shall not be discussed as a last minute addition. That's what it says on the last sentence of number 4. Sometimes in public to be heard, you'll hear something that you want to discuss. Or somebody will come to a meeting with a report that they want to give, and it's an important report, and you want to receive it and discuss it. Maybe not act on it, but at least discuss it. So that should be changed. Back to should, at the very least. I would strike it. All right. Number 7, quorum. I love the way our committees are so creative in coming up with new words for their meetings, new names. Work session. A work session, it's a meeting. If there's a quorum, there's a meeting. It is a meeting. It may be a meeting where you don't plan to take action. Maybe that's what a work session is. I would suggest banning that term because it's ambiguous and confusing to people. So item number 7, work session with no decisions may be conducted without a quorum. Well, that's not a meeting because there's no quorum. I'm not even sure why that's even in here. Especially since later on, there's a section called work session where it talks about work sessions may be requested from time to time by a public body to complete specific policy and budget work. For example, a work session follows the same law. For example, that a work session follows the same laws and protocols as a regular meeting because it is a meeting. That contradicts the part above where you use the term work session to mean something other than a meeting. It is a gathering of a non-quorum of your body. That is not a meeting. You can call it whatever you want because it's not a meeting. It's not relevant what you call it at that point. So my suggestion would be, yes, figure out this whole idea of a work session. I laugh at it every time I hear it because it's not clear what that is. You're having a meeting, you're discussing things, you're doing business. It is a meeting. Okay. Hybrid meetings and recordings. The town of Essex does not permit entirely virtual or entirely in-person meetings unless approved by the town manager. That needs to be for advisory boards. That needs to be the call of the chairperson and or the select board, not staff. Did the work session thing already. Oh, I think we're getting close. I see no more purple things. I think I'm just going to get back to yep, we're done. A lot of commitments and requirements by staff, and I'm telling you, and I think some of you have witnessed, they're not being met. It's too much. We are depending on staff for too much. We need to be more independent and capable, and we are. And I think that you should be asking the committees and the chair people and the members to carry their load and not depend on staff so much. It's just not right. And the amount of time is very limited. I witnessed it myself. That statement is absolutely true. So the whole section on staff representatives, you might simply say the staff representative responsibility is to support the committees. Done. To whatever capacity they have or are allocated. I think that's it.
Thanks, Ken.
Any questions for me at this point, being that I am on 2 committees? I can tell you exactly how this is. It is not being discussed. We have not had time to discuss it as a board, either of them. I can't speak for others. I guess I can't speak for the BCA. We haven't done that. I guess there's 3 I'm on. So we haven't done there either. I think it's important that the committees themselves get to speak with their voice, not individuals.
Ken, I do have a question for you, Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure.
Do you know if this is on the agenda for the upcoming meetings of those 2 committees?
I haven't produced the agenda for the Conservation and Trails Committee yet. It was on the last 2 meetings. But we haven't been able to get to it for the reason I explained. Our staff is telling us, I'm going to quote our staff. Our staff tells us that management requests that our meetings be limited to 1.5 to 2 hours. I have no idea who management is. I can guess, but I don't know. We are prepared to go 3 hours easily and get our agenda completed. Many of our members have complained. In fact, at the last meeting, one of our members complained quite vociferously about being asked to end our meeting short. So much so that he wrote a letter of apology. This is a problem. We need to be able to run our meetings. I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Ethan?
I just got a question for you. If it's been on multiple agendas, why haven't you guys bumped the priority?
Well, one of the responsibilities that Conservation and Trails has is to review development applications.
So you've had
And we've moved that up to top priority. We think it's the most important thing we do.
Valid. Sorry for that. I just wanted
No,
to understand that picture
Fair question.
better.
No, we try to do that as best we can. Work plan we've put above that as well, and we don't seem to be able to get to that either, I might add.
However, it was received by individual committee members, correct? We've verified
And
that,
included in the reading file and on the agenda. Oh, it's been on the agenda.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because previously there was some confusion about whether folks actually received
For
it.
Conservation
so
and Trails, yes.
I just want to make sure that it actually was at least received by
For Conservation and
everyone
Trails,
as
yes.
individuals.
Economic Development Commission, remember I'm on both, so I kind of got it both ways. No. I only know about it from the EDC perspective because I got it as a chairperson of Conservation and Trails.
Yeah, I thought I saw in the verified sending that it was sent. You may not have had
It was not given to
take it up, but it was.
It wasn't on the agenda for EDC. I double checked it today. It went back to March, I think it was, quite a ways. Has not been on the agenda in the reading file for EDC, so I don't know who got it.
And my question isn't whether it was in the reading file or on the agenda, but did members receive
I can only speak for myself.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank
there
you, Kim.
there are out of all of the boards, Conservation and Trails and the library are the 2 that have discussed it during a meeting. All others provided their comments either directly or through their staff representative.
But the question was, have all members of the committee gotten it, I think?
We've sent that to all of them. I actually followed up and sent a lot of them, so some of them have received it multiple times.
And I have prodded my members to get with it and read it over and comment on it. Absolutely, I have done that.
Okay.
Here's the kicker that I got with that, though, is that there's no requirement for electronic communication. So until that information is put on paper and posted, whether it's in the reading file or brought up as an agenda item, it can't be recognized as a thoroughly vetted topic because you're limiting the exposure to that through the internet. So until there is a physical copy of this that's being provided to every board member or put on a reading file or an agenda, then I would say it was fully delivered to everybody.
Mr. Lawrence, I think what you're getting at is that to really have good input on this, the members need to be able to discuss it as a body.
Well, I think that's up to the individual board. If they would like to discuss it as a body, they are welcome to, but if individual members would like to or prefer to give individual input, I don't think it's up to anyone to dictate what the right way to provide feedback is.
Thank you for acknowledging that that is a responsibility of the board. And I do agree with you 100%. On my board, we've made the effort, just can't quite get to it. I would like more time to do that.
And I agree with your second point about the method that it's delivered, because you can't force somebody to use the internet. In this day of age, in the state of Vermont, Vermont is a paper state from top to bottom. So I do not qualify electronic communication if it is the sole only form of communication that is not communication in a 50-50 state. Legally. Legally.
Thank you for your patience.
We can go down the rabbit hole on that one.
I've gone down it for many topics, and will happily discuss them publicly with the town of Essex, totally relevant to information distribution if we need to go down that road.
Well, I'm just saying that if a board member has a preference to receive something on paper as opposed to electronically, that should already be known and taken into consideration when things are provided to that individual board member. I'm not sure that.
Is it written that way though? Is it written law that way? Is that the person must disclose beforehand, that otherwise it's assumed?
Well, it's part of, and we're kind of going into the weeds here, but when someone joins a committee, it would be my expectation that there would be a conversation when they're onboarding as far as, I don't like to use email, I prefer in paper, similar to us as a board when we were onboarded with Greg. There have been multiple questions about whether people prefer paper packets, whether they prefer electronic communication. So
right, I agree with that, but have you ever been on the opposing side of that and heard the answers? Because they're not clear no's, because they can't be clear no's, but they're persuaded no's to talk you into alternative, which is electronic.
No, when I was on the ZBA, I received everything in paper form because it was easier. Most of the folks on the board at that time preferred the paper to be able to go in, mark it up instead of an electronic file. So I mean, we can get into.
Right, but how many years ago was that?
4.
Okay, so
4.
Different management, different scheme of.
Yeah, I mean, it was still.
Corrections.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I just want to be very clear that that's not the method of the town right now, is not to be hybrid paper electronic. The priority of the town is to be electronic.
I think that's the preference, but I don't think that that's clearly stated in the handbook.
Agreed.
So like we can have that conversation separately.
Yeah, I've already had them. I just wanted to clarify the point that that's not the case.
Okay. And we do have hands up online. So I'm going to call on Anna Roulette.
Let me just leave and just say thank you and apologize for any over emotional response. It's very frustrating to have a full agenda in front of you and not be able to complete it, as you can imagine. And I hope that we can do something to at least get over that hassle. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thanks.
Anna, go ahead.
Good evening, Anna Brulette. I'm a resident of Dalton Drive in Essex, and I am the chair of the Essex Housing Commission. I will keep my comments really brief because I want to respect the time and the agenda items you all have ahead of you. But I will just share that I am concerned about the process of bringing this to the committees and commissions and what it might mean for kind of where we are with the staffing of the groups. We were notified of the opportunity to weigh in on this handbook on June 5th, which was following our June meeting, and we were told we had until June 11th. We didn't have we are a group of volunteer members who all have full-time paid roles. So We didn't have time in those 6 days to provide feedback. We were then told the deadline was extended, August 19th, then we had until August 29th. Again, that was after our August meeting, so we didn't have a chance to bring that to our August agenda. Since then, I haven't been told to prioritize it or that we would have a chance to bring it on an agenda. So just want to elevate that I think that there are some gaps in communication between staff and committees. And it would be helpful in the future to have a better sense proactively of how and when to prioritize getting committees to discuss this live and in person, because I do think that would be more effective than asking individual members to weigh in via email. Thank you.
Sharon Zukowski.
Hi there. I am not speaking for the board. I'm just speaking for myself as a board member. We were sort of skipped over when the initial handbook went out, and we were given by email, the staff, we had about 3 days to get our comments in. We were told, and we also were doing a denial letter, which had a deadline. So it was like very rushed. And we've never had the discussion as a board how we wanted to do this, whether we wanted to discuss it as a board or do it separately. We were just all told to send our separate, by staff, not by our chair, to send our separate things in. And we were never given a copy of the updated version, which looks like a lot of work went into it. Thank you. So I'm hoping that maybe we can get a look at the updated version and maybe have time to decide as a board how we want to discuss this. Thank you.
Are there any other comments in the room? Seeing none, I will bring it back to the board for discussion. Ethan.
I just have a question. But my question is there anything that is waiting on this? Because in my mind, if the answer is no, then we should really take a break from it until it's solid from committee standpoints. And if the answer is yes, I would in my mind ask the question about how easy it is to amend this, and would it be a two-step approval because of with an amendment, or just for the creation?
Do you want to take that?
Sure. As far as what's waiting on it, in some ways nothing in particular, but it is a way to inform. Let me jump in when I'm done, but nothing to inform the boards and committees and staff representatives what the law is, what the expectation is, without having something formal. They're just supposed to know it.
Right.
If we don't have orientation, if we don't have this, if we don't have anything in place, it's just kind of there. And everyone's sort of responsible for it without having any real official formal knowledge of it. As far as once it's approved, what the amendment process looks like, to some extent that's going to be up to all of you, and staff can certainly recommend if we think something is a substantive change or not. I would approach it we talked about how we were considering this to be like a policy for your process as a two-step piece for a new policy or for substantial amendments. I think right now this is new. It would be, if you decide to move ahead with this tonight, it would be the first approval, with the idea of final approval theoretically at your next meeting. If the boards took a look at it and they provided feedback, whether that's in October, November, December 2027, at any time somebody could no, seriously. But anytime somebody could provide feedback, and we would take it into consideration, and you could take it into consideration, and if it's a word tweak or two, it's probably not substantive, and we can make the amendment in one meeting. If it's revamping a total section or deciding you want to do something completely different or completely change how the boards and committees operate, then we can talk about if you think that's substantive to take two steps. But so short answer, I think, is that most of the feedback we've heard is, in my opinion, probably non-substantial and could probably just be approved at one meeting.
Yeah, and if I could just add to that, I would liken this very similar to like the annual policies that you look at each year after your organizational meeting. You look at your computer use policy, you look at those, and sometimes you tweak them, sometimes they just keep going. I would think that this document's going to be very much like that, just because the law changes. And I've seen it just in the short period of time we've been trying to, well, maybe a long period of time, but the time that we've been trying to get this done, the law has changed.
Right.
So, and we've also made the decision to look at our cemetery, or not, Board of Civil Authority and the Board of Abatement as separate boards. And so we have made tweaks and changes to this, just and the tweaks and changes we're making aren't just from the comments, they're from changes, things we're experiencing and things that we want to do. So I would say that on an annual basis, maybe at the time that we're doing recruitment and appointments for the boards, that this is reviewed and approved, and any changes could come forward and be added. The problem, the timeline, and what's happening is that Ken just pointed out one. There were even a couple of others in the previous comments where, my staff representative isn't doing this thing. That's because we don't have anything in place that says for them to do this thing. So this is what this handbook is going to do. This is going to be putting things in place. Like, these are what our expectations are. This is how you do things. If I even think back when Greg and I first started talking about putting this together, we were talking about putting a handbook together for staff representatives. It wasn't even for boards and committees at the time, because we had the stipend program coming in, and there were some things like questions about, like, how do I process a check if this committee wants, there were some basic questions, and we really need to put a handbook together. And then it kind of grew into something where we're trying to put a consistent feel across the board for everything, because of open meeting law, public records, trying to make this all of these boards that are like apples and oranges kind of operate like one. So it's a little tricky. That's why sometimes you've got to leave some of the fine details out, so that those boards have the freedom to make those decisions for what best suits those boards. The staff representative pieces are going to be rather detailed, because again, that's going to be part of their job descriptions. That's what they are going to get evaluated on. Quite honestly, things such as, having staff signing the acknowledgement form, if that's what we need to do to get this passed, I'd say put it in there. If we had to change some shoulds to shalls and shalls to shoulds, let's consider that and get that done. I think that the longer this goes on without being in place, the longer you're going to see boards, the staff members, not understanding what we expect them to be doing, other than I can keep shooting them the law and say, make sure you're getting this posted in 3 places. We just had that conversation today where we have to remind a few of the boards about that. If we had something to point to and said, in the handbook, it's right here, this tells you how you have to have this posted in 3 places. It puts something out there in front of them to work with. I will make a few just to come back with some of the. I don't want to address every piece, but I do want to just say that there are a few things in here. For instance, the reason why we ask advisory boards to record, even though open meeting law does not require it, is for accessibility. So there's other reasons. It's not simply just because the boards could just do it on their own, or they could do it. Because we have a declaration of inclusion, because we want to make things more accessible, we made the decision to require our advisory boards to record their meetings before open meeting law said we even had to. We were one of the first communities in the state to do that. And that provides, an expansion of a way for people who are working, who can't attend meetings, who have kids at home. They're able to sit at home and watch these meetings after the fact. And I'm really proud that we can offer that. So that's why there are reasons why we have some of those things in there. I would also say, such as the organizational meeting, I think I just pointed out, we do have steps in there. This is what we'd like to see for our organizational meeting. It's just we don't have anything that tells our staff reps how to do that. This would do that if we put it in place. So a lot of the issues that maybe some of our boards, or that Ken has expressed as he's having issues with his staff representative, he would have a handbook in place to say, these are what these are the things you're supposed to be doing. Right now, there's nothing that says that. So I think that this could assist with some of that. Let me see. As far as like the boards being able to, town staff are let me see, hold on. Town departments should not become staff are aware of their responsibilities. Board members should be aware of the time involved on part of the staff in preparing studies and reports. Obviously, staff have to be involved because it's not only the staff representative at times. Sometimes committees come forth with an idea like we would like to see community gardens. Well, community gardens is going to involve time from the Parks and Rec department staff, and they're following plans also. So it's not just staff representative time. This is your time from all of your staff members that have to be considered when we're looking at these things. I think that there's, some wording here that could be nuanced if we think it should be should and shall be should. Honestly, there are many committee chairs that not all the chairs have the time to onboard new members. They have full-time jobs, I think, as Ann mentioned, they're doing something. So if there's a staff rep that can onboard new members, that's great. And if all they have to do is say, hello, these are the current things we're working on, that's at least they're getting that input. But as far as those like questions and answers, we have staff available to provide that. So not every board functions the same way. So we have to remember that. We want them to meet the law. We want them to be efficient for what's going to work for them. And we can change this. This can be changed down the road. I expect it to be changed. I will be here probably annually presenting this like I do some other things. But I think that as far as the policy goes, it's that initial, let's get it and let's get feedback from people. You put it together, and then as Greg said, they could put this on their meetings, have discussions, and bring up recommendations, and we can bring it to another board meeting. But at least we would be operating. We'd be running with it. So
And
that's
it's
my
streamlined, predictable, and repeatable way.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay to take more
Sure.
public comment? Lois, come on forward. Come on forward so folks online can hear you through the mic, if you're able. Thank you.
This is my bionic knee. One of the things that nobody's talking about, but seems important to me to remember in all this, is that the staff are paid, and the volunteer members of the boards are not. And so the respect for volunteers' time, I mean, volunteers have day jobs and lives and everything else. But when you agree to be a member of a board, you're taking on and putting yourself out there with a willingness to commit yourself to a certain amount of time to solve problems. And I think one of the ways in which respect can be shown to members of a board is for staff to facilitate that and to allow, if a board needs to meet 3 hours in order to accomplish 2 major priorities and is willing to do that, who should get in the way of that? I mean, because it's their decision and it's part of how they've committed to doing that job. And I think the fact that board members are not getting paid makes it a separate category than people who have job descriptions for which they receive remuneration. I think it's just important to remember that and to be respectful of their time and their willingness to make the time commitments to get those jobs done. If they only, if they clocked out after an hour, where would we be?
Thank you. Bringing it back to the board, Shannon.
I think we've had a great discussion. I think we've had numerous great discussions about this topic, and I think it's for a reason. As Tammy has so nicely said, this is important to get this right. I I brought this up when I spoke before. The document you sent out about, all the boards have received it, notified by, certain days. Of the 10 committees we have, only 2 have actually, according to this matrix, had it discussed at a meeting. And I would love with this, they're going to be the ones that are most affected by this. I know you said it started as a staff manual, but it's evolved into a committee manual. And it's a handbook for committees, as so said in the title. I would think it's important, and I would hope that we, the select board or the staff, if you're the one that needs to, set the instruction that at the next meeting for every committee, if they have not discussed it so far, they need to discuss it at their meeting and provide feedback, to us by our middle of October meeting. I know that most committees meet in the beginning of the month on Tuesdays or Wednesdays, or whatever it ends up being. But I would hope that that third column here that only has 2 out of the 10 spots filled with when they discuss it as a committee, we could get at least, everyone has had a chance to discuss this in a full meeting setting. I'm also curious, with this being a document that's going to affect chairs' roles and, the organizational structure of each committee, have we had a gathering of all the chairs to say, what's your feedback? I know we've gotten a lot of responses from our very involved members of the community as well as some of the chairs, but it seems that there's something that's missing here. And I'm just curious, have we held a 2-hour meeting or a meeting with the board chairs or commission
No.
chairs?
No, we've not.
Okay.
If that's something that all of you would like to do, we can look at facilitating that. We can ask if each board wants, can get this on their next available meeting and respond by a certain time. And believe me, I am all for public input and public
Oh,
participation.
absolutely.
I think we do a lot to support that. I also look at this as this is going to be your document, and at what point do we move forward? If we're going to keep waiting for it, I'd probably suggest, do we just table it for a couple months to focus on some other stuff? We've been chipping away at this for a few months. Is it just time to pause and wait and come back in 2 or 3 months? Part of this, the challenge is we keep getting changes and iterations. You heard it from Sharon Zukowski tonight, I think it was, who said she hadn't seen the latest version. The version has changed every time. So I think it's my recommendation and request to all of you would be either to move ahead soon with something that can be amended going forward as we get input, or to just take a break, let's pause this whole effort and bring it back at some other time. I don't know what that time is, and Tammy, I'm saying all this without having consulted with you at all, so I don't know if...
And just if I may, just a note on that, tonight is September 15th, our next meeting, since this would be approve and adopt, so it would be a 2-meeting process. Our next meeting, at which point, we have 3 weeks to provide some clarity to our boards to say, should you want to provide consolidated board level input, please do so by X date. Should you not, that is obviously their right to do so. And there's nothing saying that we would need to adopt on October 6th. That could be at our meeting following that to provide that more time. But I agree that I think we either need to adopt it and get that framework in place, understanding that it can be tweaked and changed as we go along and be more of a living document, or we just need to stop talking about it for a while because this has taken up a lot of oxygen in the room. And I do, if the board is okay with it, Dawn's hand went up online. Everybody okay if we go
My
back
only
for
last
more?
comment on this would just be, I know if we did pause it, I think it needs to be done by the next, cycle. So by July next year, I would hope it's ready.
I would
But
hope so.
I think what you suggested of middle or end of October is great.
Dawn, I do see your hand is up. Go ahead.
I just want to say, we did not, as the BCA, receive a revised copy. We only received the original. But what I originally raised my hand for was, you're expecting staff to have read this and follow the rules, but you're not making them sign the document so chairs can see that they've already read it. and are willing to enforce it. I understand it's part of their employment, but I also think it's important that the public as well as the chairs know that their representative has read it and understands it and will follow it. That's just really important.
You had said, I think that, Greg would need to think about that as the leader of the staff. Thanks for laughing at that. But chime in from a town manager's perspective about adding in a signature line. But
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. I think it can be something when people are onboarded, if they're coming into a position where they're going to be a staff rep. I think it's something we can add to our onboarding documents.
perfect. Ethan,
Can I make a suggestion that we do a preliminary approval, and then, or just make an approval, and then plan on changing it on the 6th, and then our actual approval would be November 3rd. Because instead of making an approval and planning on the 20th and having this on the agenda for three meetings, essentially plan on just having new information on October 6th.
so what I hear you saying is you would like to make a motion to approve this evening with future adoption at the November meeting. Am I
I
understanding
think
that
that's
correct?
where it would fall, because you're gonna see changes on the 6th, which would restart the clock for 2 meetings. Correct?
No,
If significant changes, you would have to post another 2 meetings.
not 2 meetings out, but we would,
You would have to re-adopt
Have
and
to have
then
another
final.
right, so
So you're still
can I make
November
a,
3rd. Yeah.
can I make a
yeah.
friendly suggestion to your friendly non-motion
Yes.
quite yet? Not quite yet motion. If you're ready to move forward with the first approval tonight for adoption at a later date, I think that sounds great. I'm thinking we could probably send it out, jump in if I'm misspeaking here, but I think we can probably send it out to the staff reps, boards and committees, everybody. This is the version that has had first approval from the select board. Require all staff reps to get it on to the next available agenda and discuss it, take any feedback, and whether we do the second meeting in October or the first meeting in November, final approval with any feedback from boards and committees.
And
you
by
can
then
still
they
make-
should have all met.
Right.
That's what I was thinking. Or get rid of it.
Not get rid of it, bump it.
Yeah. Andy, did you have a?
Yeah, I had my hand up a while ago. but,
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Starting in our next meeting, we're going to be having all of the committees come through to talk to us anyway. So it may be appropriate for them to give us that feedback as part of those. I'm very happy to do a preliminary approval tonight with a potential future final approval. I would really like to do that so that we have something that we're working from rather than. And then I don't care when the next date is, because we're not really changing anything that we're doing in this document. And so to try to get it moving forward, I would like to make a motion that the select board make preliminary approval, or whatever the words are.
I think I took out preliminary because that was a whole thing last time.
Oh,
So
right.
we
right,
got-
right, yeah, all right.
I
Just
remember
approve.
that
First
now.
approval of the handbook for boards, committees, commissions, and their staff representatives to be finalized at a future date, or whatever the right word there is.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. Any final discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you.
Next agenda item, consider approval of updated capital budget for fiscal year 2026. Karen, I believe that is you.
This one is going to be me, so I'll cozy up to Greg here.
This is going to be your favorite topic of the night. This will be your favorite topic.
So one of the pieces that follows the approval of an additional 2 cents on the capital tax rate of town meeting day this past March is what to do with those revenues, since they weren't built into the capital budget that was adopted in January of this year. And so with the grand list landing right where we expected it to land, the predictions of how much revenue we'd be collecting are spot on. Right around $325,000 is what I think Dan had presented earlier this year. And I'm proposing some projects or purchases that money would be put towards. And so I'll go through each of them. Please ask any more detailed questions if I don't get to whatever your interest is in my description. First is a dedication towards a library elevator reserve. So the library's elevator unfortunately has malfunctioned and had a couple of issues over the summer. A staff person actually got trapped in the elevator. So we've had the technicians out a couple of times. They've made some small repairs and they've advised us that probably within 5 years we'll need to replace that structure. So with the discussions evolving about whether the library will be there in 5 years, we want to make sure that we're thinking about this expensive endeavor and putting money aside should it be necessary to replace it. So 14,840 of the additional capital tax monies would be dedicated to that. Hopefully we could start building on that each year to kind of get to this 5-year time frame with significant reserves to make that replacement.
How much do you expect a full replacement to cost?
150,000 is the first quote that we got. Our buildings manager is seeking other quotes to make sure that that's a competitive price, but it sounds like it's the controls and I'll use the term motherboard. We're getting outside the limits of my knowledge, but it has to do with the fact that it was installed 40 or so years ago and it really hasn't been upgraded since. So they don't make the parts that help support that and they don't make that motherboard anymore. So it's really the controls that need to be revamped and those are quite expensive.
Sure.
So, yeah.
How much do we have in that towards that now? Is this the first?
This is the first contribution towards it. There's money in the sort of library fund, a small amount, but it's not dedicated for an elevator or elevator repairs.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I got a couple questions, but to start off before I go into any of my other ones, isn't this money considered raised from the fiscal year that we just voted on?
This is the additional 2 cents
That we just added on,
that just took it. We just had the collection was today.
right?
So this is
Started in July 1st.
of this current fiscal year.
Right. So my question is, why isn't this being put in with the rest of the capital? Why is this separate?
Because this would give us authorization within fiscal year 26 to spend this money, where budget.
'Cause we wanna
discussions
spend
will
it
be for
this year.
27, yeah.
Okay. And then, okay. So this is all to be spent within 26.
No.
There's money that's
costs will not
to
be
be
spent this year, right? That would be added
Right,
to-
yes.
We'd be
Okay.
setting the money aside to spend either this year or at a future date in accordance with the capital plan.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's what I was going to revert back to was the capital plan and the wording in there about sorry, I forgot the words. But there's different words about how the money is told. So let's say we put the money in the elevator reserve and it's one word instead of the other word. That money can then be taken back as long as it's in the library envelope and can be used for the building of a new library.
So it sounds like you're referring to the capital projects policy, which wasn't adopted.
It wasn't adopted.
It was not.
Okay.
Nope.
So what I would do, or what I would request here as a member of the board is that the town come to us with immediate purchases for us to make a decision to use excess capital funds for the year before. And then I would recommend that the rest of it go into capital planning. That way, when it's designated or assigned and we get back to that conversation that we were having about what that means and who can reassign the money and how a future board can reassign the money depending on the classification that it's under. And I would recommend that this go through the capital process rather than be put forth to spending now with the presumption that only the Parks and Rec truck is the only funds that are currently needed to be spent.
Andy?
So this isn't excess capital. This is, we have an approved capital plan that we based on 2 cents.
3
cents, sorry. Right. The counting shall be 3, yes. And so we couldn't put together a capital plan that included 5 cents because we didn't know whether the 5 cent would be approved. So Ethan, what this is an amendment to our capital plan to account for the extra 2 cents that we're getting this year, rather than waiting until January to decide what to do with this money. We're
On July 1.
amending our capital plan now with money that we know we're going to get and spending some of it this year. Yeah.
Right. But the way we budgeted, the way we approved the budget and the capital plan was for a set dollar amount, right? And it's all voted on as a whole, budget and capital all together. The town voters vote on one number. I know they don't get to vote on the capital, but we set a budget. This is outside of our budget. This is going to be considered excess revenue after the end of the year. You can shake your head, but the only thing that should be happening is the town should be coming and asking for the $40,000 to replace the truck because they have an immediate need, and the rest of the money should be put into the capital fund and broken down the way the rest of it is on January 1. Or whatever the date is that we set the capital solid before we move on to the budget. That's the proper way to do it.
Correct.
So this is, the select board, the voters approved the capital tax rate. The select board
I know
approves
how
the
it
capital
works.
budget and the
I
capital.
understand that.
I'm speaking for the
Okay.
public too.
Okay.
The select board approves the capital budget and the capital plan. So this money is to assign for fiscal year 26 for the capital budget for fiscal 26 for the next 5 years. Staff is proposing a few different areas where it could be and where it could go. The truck is one that could be spent probably pretty quickly. Some of the library improvements could be spent as soon as this year. Additional funds for Indian Brook Dam repairs. We have RFPs coming in for engineering studies on the Indian Brook Dam. Some of that could be spent this year.
Is there money in any of those accounts? So yes.
Some of them. I don't have it memorized. Karen might be able to speak more knowledgeably as to what's in each account. But this is not going into the operating. It's not going to show up as
I understand
extras
that.
at the end. This is going into
Capital.
And so I guess if
But did the vote say that it had to be spent in 26? Shall it be approved? Because shall it be denied, there'd be no money. So that's my point, is that this isn't an immediate spend. This is not an approved immediate spend. And it was never presented that way in the capital tax increase. It was that we were going to make a plan for it.
It was approved for FY26, which is what we're in now.
To be appropriated.
So I'm not sure why there wouldn't be the assumption that it would be assigned in FY26. And
so any money that needs to be spent this year, let's see it as an individual, and we'll approve it. Any money that's not going to be spent, I don't understand the rush to reassign. Like the salt shed, there's plenty of things in here. There's nothing that I object to. I object to the process of it.
So two thoughts. So just to read and pull up the exact question that was asked and approved by voters. Shall the town of Essex increase the capital reserve fund by adding 2 cents to the tax rate in addition to the 3 cents previously authorized for the purpose of financing capital projects and equipment? So it doesn't speak to when it would be spent or what category. For the sake of discussion, to try to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, I suppose an alternative, and again, not having discussed this, an alternative would be...
I may not be the majority
Oh,
either,
yeah. All of that, but I want to just try to make sure.
Yeah.
So that roughly $325,000 goes into unallocated capital reserve. And then when we need something to spend, we come to you and say, we would like to draw $40,000 for a Parks and Rec truck out of the capital reserve.
That's what you're asking.
That's all I'm asking for until we
with
get
that
to the
approach.
next capital session.
And then we would say, we recommend pulling whatever's left over out of that 325 and assigning it.
Let's say something happens tomorrow and you need the 250,000 for the salt shed, and you have it. Something, priorities change, right? I would hate to have extra funds that we needed to raise, and commit them before we even get to our capital planning for the year.
Andy?
We can always change them again. These aren't unassailable numbers.
Depending on how they're assigned.
We don't have that policy in place that defines those. So,
But that's the way we practiced the select board last year. I can pull the minutes and revamp that whole conversation if
But I
we
think
need to.
it's
But
the-
that was your argument
The
last year.
unallocated versus
that those
allocated
funds were
versus
assigned.
designated.
And you stood
that's
on
fun.
that.
That's fund balance.
No,
talking
we were talking
not
about capital. We were talking about capital for the upper Main Street, the $100,000. Because I wanted to reassign it, and it couldn't be because it was assigned.
No, I never said that.
Yeah, I'll pull the minutes.
Assigned stuff can always be.
And that's where the whole conversation started when we brought up the capital plan that didn't, I guess you could say that it didn't, we said no to it because we didn't make an action on it. That's our new way, but it didn't, there's still ideas about that. I mean, there was comments that this wanted to be brought back to the board to be solidified. That was your recommendation when we stopped talking about it.
Andy?
I support the staff's recommendation.
Was that a motion?
No, I'm just saying.
Oh, you're just ending it.
You haven't, it's not my, I like to give everybody a chance to talk, and then we haven't had public either, but no, that wasn't a motion.
Is there a time limit on my speaking? Is that what you're referring to, or?
No, you were done with your comments, and
Yeah,
Andy just raised
wanna
his
make
hand to chime in that he's in favor of the staff recommendation.
It's just the comments after that seemed to be misleading to some.
No, he was just commenting
Just
that that's
clarification.
where he's at, and that's why he was speaking up. He wasn't making a motion. Kendall?
I have to support Ethan in this because the whole reason that we went for a couple extra cents of capital is because we're short in capital for items that we need that we can't fund now, basically, and in the future. So items like the library improvements that are going to happen right off, or the parts truck that can be purchased now that we have the money, or the salt shed because now we can't get a grant, that's pretty easy to explain as a needed capital purchase for the extra money. But there should be some discussion through the capital budget. Do we want to put 50,000 towards the dam repairs? Maybe we only want to put 20,000, and maybe we want to put 45 or 50,000 towards the library elevator reserve. I mean, that's discussion that would take place during the capital allocation. So I would support those 3 projects, but the other 2, I think those could be held off. Just my opinion.
And you could have that, I'm sorry.
Yep,
No.
go
You could
ahead.
have that discussion now. This is just staff's recommendation. If you'd rather put more money towards the library and less towards the Indian Brook Dam repairs, that's
See,
your purview.
Yeah.
And that's correct. But we don't have the whole capital picture with everything all taken into account at once. So it's hard to look at 5 projects and say, maybe we need to split 5,000 in a bunch of different places. So that's all.
Shannon?
I love coming in as a new member because I'm jumping into a lot here, and I just a point of clarification. Maybe it's from staff, maybe it's from you, Tracy, Madam Chair. When is that capital plan allocation meeting usually taking place? That we get, is that the budget day or?
It's usually after the beginning of the new year, sometime in January-ish
Okay.
timeframe. I mean, I think of this as like a delayed version of the 2025
So you're seeing this as
capital
catching up
planning,
as-
just because we
yeah.
didn't have the funds available to, we didn't know whether the 2 cents would pass.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like a bifurcated capital plan. This is like part 2 for 2026 that would have happened in January had we already passed the 2 cents. Had the community
Had it already been
already
Sure.
approved the 2 cents.
Would us not voting on this tonight delay anything? I don't know. There's 3 projects on here that Kendall just mentioned that sounds like they are timely and different things. I also I would love to hear from the staff, as this is their recommendation, as to how they came up with the number for. I know you were going through piece by piece, and I was excited to hear the rest of your spiel. But I'm just curious how you made these prioritizations, because obviously there's a lot of, bites at the apple we could take.
Should I?
Yes, please.
To answer your question sort of up top, all of these are based in safety. And so that's why they got the priority recommendation over a full discussion in context of how the additional revenues will affect 27 and beyond. So that's why these ones rose to the top. There were many ideas that staff kicked around. So with a staff member getting trapped in the library elevator, that one rose to the top because of the number of public folks that building serves.
Oh, well, that was an issue when we had the staff tour.
Yeah, and how important access is in that building, because the handicap is at the lowest level. So you need that elevator to move folks up to the top. With regard to safety at the entranceway, it seems like maybe it was before my time, but the damage that occurred to the entrance of the library seems like it's salt related and became most evident last winter. So that's why that didn't make this year's capital budget recommendations. Is I don't think we knew enough about what needed to be done there or what the problem was. So now that we've investigated that, we have both a quote and a concern that going into another winter would be irresponsible. The wireless access points is something that has come up through IT recently. There's some challenges with internet over there. It actually is connected to the DPW building, and as a result, they're sort of the end of the line and right now struggling with public Wi-Fi speed. And so we have a new firewall to install over there, and it looks like the access points are the things that are keeping that firewall from being able to be installed and that internet able to be faster and actually usable by the patrons that are over there without using a hotspot, which is the sort of short-term patch it together solution that we've been working under. The parks truck, that is in the fiscal year 27 plan for replacement. Harlan shared some photos with me when he came on board of all the equipment, and I did not realize at the time the state of that truck. It's rough. It can last another year, but it'll probably take that long to get a truck if we order it today. I think the 6 months might have been a little under. I was feeling positive. On Indian Brook Dam, that is another one that rose to the top because of the work that we've been doing to try to get the engineering assessment complete. You know, Kendall had mentioned, I can't remember if it was in this forum or in a private conversation, projects like this cost millions. So this is not going to get us there, but it's trying to chip away at that funding. There's much more funding out there to remove dams than there are to fortify them. So we'll have to look into that, but that's where that one came from. And then the salt shed actually was born out of a suggestion from Ethan. So he had said, hey, we've tried for 2 years to get the grants needed to pursue this project. Why don't we just fund it ourselves rather than wait yet another year and have the building continue to deteriorate? So Aaron has been working with me on sort of pivoting from what they had assumed would be necessary through a VTrans supported project. As you might imagine, they have quite high standards and bidding requirements and all sorts of right-of-way stuff that we would have had to move through. If we don't need to do that, the cost comes down and we can probably move a lot sooner. So this is actually in anticipation of construction coming much sooner than it would be if VTrans actually did fund our grant. So that's how these materialized in front of you. Certainly we can do whatever the board's wish is, whether it's come back to you with a larger look before you want to approve any of these. We can talk about whether these are the right numbers and the right projects, or it could all go into undesignated capital. And we come to you with individual requests. As Anne, I like the way Anne mentioned earlier, or there's some other possibility that's the solution that no one has named. So any of those things are reasonable and possible.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions or discussion? Or would someone like to make a motion?
Do we need public or not?
Do we have public comment on this item? There is no one. Oh, no, Ken, I do see you behind the chair there. I couldn't see you before. There you go. Not seeing any public comment. Andy.
Make a motion that the Select Board adopt an updated fiscal year 2026 capital budget in the amount of $3,114,899 to support the projects described in the attached memo.
A second.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Shannon. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I've got the hiccups tonight. They're coming more frequently than usual. Any final discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
Hey.
Motion carries 4-1. Thank you. Moving on to budget goals. Discussion about select board budget goals. Greg, refresh my memory. Was this just to recap the overall budget goals to get new ones?
Mostly to recap what was discussed at your last meeting. In the attached memo, it has a list of the goals that we heard from all of you. Also an opportunity, Tracy was not at the last meeting, so an opportunity for her to see what's on there and provide any comment that she may have in addition to that. And hopefully we captured your comments accurately, but now is a good time to correct us or correct me if that was not the case.
Any discussion, corrections, comments, Shannon?
I just want to say, if I remember correctly, this was a suggestion to make sure it was on this agenda so that you did have a chance by Ethan. I thought that was very nice of him.
Thank you, Ethan. And if I will, I did open my email for this specific purpose to read what I had sent with feedback. Great work from the board and the manager's office here. These are much in line with my own thoughts around minimal increase necessary to fund operations, looking at where historical underspending has occurred, and also where operational efficiencies can be leveraged along the lines of work smarter, not harder, continuous improvement, use of automation, process reengineering, etc. So just to share those thoughts with the full board, I did provide them in email, but I did just want to make those comments. But thank you for thinking of me and wanting to hear my thoughts too.
Important.
So yeah, Kendall.
I just wanted to add to the discussion. We've thrown out like 2 to 3%, but I think a lot of places now are looking at the rate of inflation plus 1% as like an upper limit for for budget increases. Just because the inflation plays a large part of what you need to fund your services. You know, as we know, if you have 5% inflation, you can't really only increase your budget 2%.
Well, you can, but then you have to cut.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Ethan.
I will add that the nice part is we approved a capital tax increase last year. So there is room in the budget now for capital transfer to not be filled in the amount of $314,000, which will give you room for your inflation. And you would still raise the same amount of money that you did last year, relying on the capital to be what it's made to be, which is collection off from grand list tax dollars under a certain percentage or a dollar amount, which is pennies. But there is room that we're going to see this year from the way that we used to do things with our transfers because of fund balance that was used to cover that transfer.
Yeah, I mean, one would hope ideally we would want to fund our capital tax efficient to fund our capital budget without any operating transfers.
Agreed.
Ideally.
So that'd be something just to keep in mind as we work our way that direction, that there is that to remember.
So I will pose to the board, is there anything missing? Is there anything you would like to see changed within the document that was included in the packet? Seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and kick it over to public comment. If members of the public have any comment on our budget goals or reaction to our budget goals that were included in the packet. I am not seeing any, so I think we're good to move on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see anybody screaming at me, so that's what we're going to do. Budget goals, that brings us up to now business item 6H. Consider designating voting delegate for annual business meeting, VLCT. Passive and the Employment Resources Benefit Trust. There was some, Andy, go ahead.
So yeah, this is in conjunction with the Vermont League of Cities and Towns Town Fair. It's the day before. It's a virtual only meeting at 3 p.m. on Tuesday, the 7th. Yes. I have covered this many years in the past. I have a couple of other commitments that day, so would actually prefer someone else to do it, but I can if no one else wants to. And it's this year is not a policy making, so it's the second year of a biennium, so the VLCT isn't changing their things that they lobby for or against. So that whole policy discussion is not there. This is mostly electing officers and approving budgets for the insurance company, the insurance that VLCT offers, and is that a retirement fund? I forget what verb is.
Resources and benefits.
Yeah.
And so it's a great learning experience for someone if you'd like to do it. But again, I would do it but I have to work through a couple scheduling things to make it work.
I laugh because I almost made the motion for Andy. We were listening to Andy, so.
I didn't hear that.
Is there any other interest?
I was interested in doing it.
Anything?
Unfortunately, I'm on a business trip, so I will not have the time at 3 o'clock on that Tuesday.
What is it? October the 8th to the 7th?
October 7th. It's a
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
3 p.m.
Yep.
How long is it usually? Hour or two?
At most 2 hours, yeah, because again, they're not discussing policy. This is just officer elections and business reports and approvals of budgets.
So I'll happily do it. I just got to be at Maple Street for 5:30 to coach football, but I'm more than happy to do it.
That's December 7th?
October.
October 7th.
Unfortunately, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm football coach.
Oh, thanks, man.
So it's a Tuesday after.
Chargers.
Yeah, go Chargers, man. 3-4 flag.
Do we nominate somebody, or is it?
Yes, we would want to designate a voting delegate for the annual business meeting.
I make the motion that the select board designate Ethan Lawrence as our delegate to the VLCT annual meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Shannon. Are you accepting of that nomination?
Yeah,
Okay.
as long as you guys know that I'm probably logging off at like 5:15. But
That's fine.
there should be no serious business.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Should be done.
Yeah, should be done. We should be good.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
I'll vote
Motion
against.
carries 5-0. Thank you.
Cool.
Thank you, Ethan.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
it'd be cool to see something different.
Yeah. Okay, so H, check. Discussion of shared services agreement. Did you want to discuss any of the remaining items?
I think for the assessing, we've I think brought it up publicly, but just to give a quick overview, we have a shared services agreement with Essex Junction for reappraisal and assessing services. That is set to expire at the end of the reappraisal, which is due for completion in June 2026. So as we get into budgets and looking into the future, there's a question of how we want to continue that service. Thought it might be worthwhile to get any public feedback if there is any thoughts on that, but do recommend getting into the details of the contract in executive session. And this is your topic, so I'm sorry for
Yeah,
jumping
no,
off.
I
but
think
anything
that's
to add?
accurate. Yeah.
Okay.
You want some motions?
We're before we do that, let's hop to the reading file, just to take that off before we go into executive session. Shannon, go ahead.
Just a membership comment or member comment. I wanted to congratulate Tammy, the staff, as well as I know Lorraine, Zaloom, and others were involved with the planning of the opioid dinner that happened last week. It was excellent. I found it very informative. It was a great panel. Excellent organizations that had information in the lobby and different things in the halls of Essex High School, and the food was delicious. And I think the conversation was great. I'm excited to see how this annual event grows.
Thank you. Tammy's not here anymore.
I know.
But I think Lorraine is still online. But thank you to everyone who participated. Andy.
Wanted to comment on how happy I am to see the community garden survey discussion there, and also the all three, or actually all four of the Parks and Rec things here. The Community Day is Saturday. I've offered my time. Come have a good time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Should be fun.
I haven't been asked to, make cotton candy again this year, so I don't think I'll be covered head to toe in melting sugar. But yeah, fun time. I also wanted to Ethan, go ahead.
Oh no, you're good.
I also wanted to point out just absolute kudos to Parks and Rec for the great work that they've been doing. Keep it up. It's great to see. Good work. It's pretty incredible. Ethan, Kendall, any?
Yeah, I was just gonna ditto all those things that Andy said, and I wanted to give a heartfelt thanks to Public Works because they are going around town right now and restriping everything before winter, and their consistent improvements of what I see as efficiency in operations, from strategies and the ways that they work around town have been amazing to watch this summer, and I think we have we should be very excited for the future with our town because our Public Works is building into an unstoppable team, so it's going to be awesome. And thanks to staff for supporting those efforts.
Yeah. Ditto. Kendall, anything or?
Yeah, I would just make a general note that I think a lot of folks take our staff for granted across all the departments, and everything I've seen, we are exemplary on a number of items that other towns might be striving to reach. So kudos to everybody. You make our job very easy.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, so now if someone has motions for executive.
Thank you all for the comments. I will happily pass it on to staff. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy, you have your hand up.
I move that the Select Board make the specific finding that premature general public knowledge of the town's position concerning contract negotiations would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
I move that the Select Board enter into executive session to discuss contracts pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A to include the town manager, deputy manager, and town assessor.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Shannon.
I move that the Select Board enter into executive session to discuss the negotiating or securing of real estate purchase or lease options in accordance with 1 VSA Section 313A2 and to include the town manager and the deputy town manager.
Thank you, Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Andy.
I move that the Select Board make the specific finding that general public knowledge of pending or probable civil litigation to which the public body is or may be a party would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Shannon. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
I move that the Select Board enter into executive session to discuss pending or probable civil litigation to which the public body is or may be a part pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1E to include the town manager and deputy manager.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0.
I already got the last one, too.
Yep.
Okay, I move the Select Board make the specific finding that general public knowledge of contracts would place the town at a substantial disadvantage.
Did we already did that one with the.
All right, I move that the
repeat.
Select Board enter into executive session to discuss contracts pursuant to 1 VSA 313A1A. Did we already do this one, too?
Yeah.
I think we're good.
It was the same
There's
for H, I think.
Where's the language?
And the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer, right, or employee pursuant to 1 VSA 313A3 to include the town manager. You're
There
right,
we
that is
go.
a different one.
Thank you, Andy. Is there a second? Ethan, thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. We are now in executive session. Is there anybody
Yeah,
else?
you woke me up. Sorry about that. Like what time is it?
It's just another service we offer, Lorraine.
Thanks, Tracy.
In open session, who has the motion? Did we, Andy?
Make the motion that the select board extend a bonus of $3,000 to Greg. Second.
Thank you. Andy, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Greg.
Thank you all.
Shannon.
I motion that we adjourn.
Thank you, Shannon. Ethan.
Second.
Thank you, Ethan. All those in favor, please signify by saying
Aye.
aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries 5-0. We are now adjourned. Thank you for sticking around. Have a good night.
Good night, Lorraine.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Lorraine.